With an average turnaround time of 3 weeks, if you want your house sold quickly, then contact Stefan today on 01942 356 577. Quote Super League Raw for 33% off. Well, we finally nailed him down. It took us a while, but we snagged one. We went fishing and we got him. Great to have Derek with us. Hi, Derek, you okay?
Yeah, but I didn't realise I got 33% off Steph renting some of my houses out by quoting Super League Raw.
Sorry, Steph. Oh dear, that's going to be a conversation later, I'm sure.
He always gets a good deal.
I think he looks after me anyway, don't you, lad?
Yeah, absolutely.
I certainly do, mate. I certainly do.
He's even got a picture of you as a kid on his cup. Put that back up, Steph. Is that Derek as a child, mate? That's taking it a whole new level, that, mate. Oh, no, it's not.
That's my beautiful daughter. That's my beautiful daughter.
Yeah, she's far better looking. Anyway, it's okay. Look, before we start, Derek's given Super League Raw his time today. And, of course, he's happy to answer any questions that the fans have got. Because Derek, you know, as much as the owners, of course, give us a game, he also knows we don't have a game without the speckies that go through the turnstile. So, Derek, very happy to be answering your questions as stakeholders in the game. With that said, anybody with any derogatory comments in the chat will be evicted and will never watch Super League Raw again. We're a family show. We've got kids watching this. So please, in the chat, our whole mantra here at Super League Raw on all the shows we do is we show the utmost respect. It's okay to disagree with people, but we can do it with respect. So please be mindful. We've got kids in the chat. And like I say, let's show some respect today. We all know that Derek is a love him, hate him character. He is Marmite. He'd accept that. But we will not accept anything today that's there. Right, Bazza Kingston straight in. It would appear that the Super Chats is already up and going. Bazza is 40 today. Wish Bazza Kingston 40, happy 40th, Derek. He's one of our members.
Happy birthday, Bazza, lad.
Indeed, yeah. Sending love and support through all. Yes, a quick one from Mark.
They say life begins at 40. We got about another 6 stone to go, so.
And Mark Hill as well, another member. He's are you going to Vegas in 2026? And if you will you meet him and Bazza for a beer?
Will I be going to Vegas?
Yes.
No, I'm going to get a marquee player instead of wasting my money like I did over there last time.
Fair play. So he might, if you're nice to him, Mark, he might actually have a Zoom virtual beer with you in Vegas, but he'll be very much at home. Right, look, we said straight away, and I want to just put this out there straight away. We know that, and the whole reason that Derek's giving us this exclusive is that we try and talk the game up. And there's a lot of times where Derek's concerned that all of the good that he does in the game, and don't get me wrong, if anybody thinks this is a love and it's not, we're going to get into Derek. Don't worry about that. He expects that. We will ask him some spiky questions and we'll see what he's got to say. But it's also right and appropriate at Super League Raw that we call out some poor behaviours because, Derek gets eyes on the sport. We know that sometimes the media present him in, for me personally, a disappointing light. And a lot of what the good he does doesn't get highlighted. So, for example, the Catalan episode, that very same week, Derek was doing a bike ride for candlelighters to raise money for candlelighters who's done some great work with Darryl Powell's grandson. None of that got exposure. None of it did. It just the drum got the exposure. Now, all what's happened in the last week as well, there's a lot of people talking about that. You might have missed this. Mickey Hyam, as we know, is bravely fighting cancer at this time. We saw Mickey at the LSV, me and Steph, on Friday night when we were searching for Derek. And actually, he was in great spirits, I have to say that. And Derek has designed, with his design team, etc., this replica shirt for Mickey Hyam with all proceeds going to the Mickey Hyam Fund. Now, if you want to support Mickey Hyam, if you don't want the shirt, if you can't get down to Lee, if you live in other parts of the country, there's a QR code at the top of the screen. When you watch this back, if you can do it now, just go on that QR code, go straight to the GoFundMe page and support a legend of our game in Mickey Hyam. But Derek, I think it was 500 shirts out of his own heart he's donated into this. That's not got any publicity. So, like I say, we'll go back to the chat about respect. This man does so much that doesn't get the headlines that he deserves. It's too easy to go for clickbait. It's too easy to go for sensationalism. This man does a lot of good for charity, for people who played the game, etc. So please bear that in mind throughout this show. Derek, on behalf of the community, and you'd have done it anyway, but spot on, mate, for doing that for Mickey. Cracking gesture.
Yeah, it's over 650 now, which blew me away a bit, but that's why I put the limit on 500 of them, because I saw the page, I reposted it and stuff. That's the easy bit to do. I mean, Mickey, anybody fighting that, I lost my dad coming up to 5 years, well, just gone 5 years now, with cancer, and it's horrific. I think there's probably not many people in the world who, if not someone in the family or a friend who they know, everybody knows somebody that's been involved with that battle. And Mickey, to get it a second time, my wife had it and had to have an hysterectomy. She's 10 years in remission now, so every year that passes by is a year you think better. So it'd be easy for me to give pass some money over to Mickey's fund, but I thought, what can I do that's a bit different than that? And actually Bradley, who's my designer for a new co I'm doing, been working all year behind the scenes on establishing that, which will go soon. And he said, why don't we do a shirt for Mickey that represents all the different clubs? That's like kind of his DNA, that's about him. There's a little message about his family on there. He's got that picture of him and his two lads, Harry and Alex. His name on the catchphrase, he's one of our own, which isn't just a Lee song. It's what everybody always kind of sang about him. And of course, we played for Great Britain and for England as well. So Bradley said, you better be careful saying you're giving all proceeds. What if it sells like 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 shirts? You could end up. And I said, right, okay, well, if I was donating on the page, 5k, then if we cap it at 500 shirts, then that's what it'll cost me. And thereon after, we will only take the cost of the production in our factory that's making that shirt. So it's not a rugby shirt per se. Those people who got the Wigan and Lee Hospice one, that was also done by my business, but not, as I said, we've not really put that out there, and I've purposely not named it on anything to do with this because it's not about that. But it's similar to that, but a heavier weight material and a heavier stitching. And it'd be great to see. I'm away, unfortunately, the day he does the walk, but it'd be amazing to see hundreds of people turn up and walk with Mickey. I mean, how big would that be? Just for eyes on the game, for the news around it, and also the awareness on cancer and the difficulties it presents people.
Well, we'll be there to cover it. We intend to be down there to cover it and show our support. And yeah, so like I say, all profits will go to Mickey, which is a phenomenal gesture, isn't it? And that is outstanding. And we wish Mickey, his family, nothing but love and support. And like I say, Super League Raw will be there to do that. Anybody who's watching on anything but YouTube, do me a favour. It's only a small thing, but it's a big thing. If you could go over to YouTube, it's still live on there, and subscribe to our YouTube. We're really trying to push our YouTube channel. So if you're watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, any of the other platforms that we put out there, please, if you could just shoot across to YouTube now, subscribe while you're there and watch this through YouTube, you'll be doing us a great favour indeed. Right, let's get into why we're here. Okay, let's get into why. It's very important, of course, that we talked about Mickey and gave that a little bit of exposure this morning. It'd been wrong of us not to do that. But of course, massive ramifications from what happened on Monday this week. So we thought we'd try and get a bit of clarity. Derek saw our Unpacked episode where me and Steph gave our opinions, but we wanted to get it from the horse's mouth himself. So yes, so as you can see, the super chats is up. If you want your question to be guaranteed, you do use that function. We've got a couple preloaded from our members, but if you have got a real burning question for Derek and you definitely want me to give it to him, then do go over to YouTube and do it through super chats. Right, to get the party started and to get rolling, I'm gonna go straight for Derek straight away, because I said this in our Unpacked and I want his answer to this. Derek, you've been on this. I think your third time you've been on Super League Raw. We like to promote our game. We're passionate about our game. We have a glass half full community, not a glass half empty community. The thing that frustrates me in the way that we behave is that we wait for official announcements from clubs before we strike. So even if we get pre-warning of a transfer or something like that, we will wait. We will allow the club to provide their fans with those announcements. Now, there was a massive meeting on Monday. I've got to ask you this question. I think it's a major on goal. Why wasn't there a press conference straight after that meeting? Nigel Wood, maybe yourself and a couple of others, invite the press, no clickbait, no speculation. You're straight into a press conference. This is what we've discussed. This is what we've decided. Q&A, and then people get it verbatim without the sensationalism. Why wasn't that done?
Yeah, I saw that on your Unpacked episode, and I thought it was a really good point, and I think it is still is a good point. It's probably a question. You know, I'm not the RFL. It's not my decision. Things around that. The statement literally, excuse me, the short statement that got released literally got typed up in the room. I guess, you know, we actually said I got there early, and I said to Nigel, I'm surprised there's not a load of press outside waiting to see what goes on with this, because that's something people can do. But I guess the real reason is that was a meeting. That was the third consecutive meeting around that subject. Okay, the one preceding that took place at Lee, and in that meeting at Lee, we were presented to by IMG regarding some stuff as well concerning Sky and the valuation, etc. And a simple task was set of Nigel and the strategic review committee panel, if you will, to find a way of going to 14 teams and eradicating league features, but at no cost to us. So, a la Mission Impossible, one would think, with that, which is why we've never moved anywhere with it. And I want to, I'll answer your question, and then I just want to take you back a step around that as well, which is important. So, I think the reason that wouldn't have been done, and why it wouldn't have been sensible to have done it, is because we was having a debate around what presentation was put to us by the strategic review panel through Jason at Global, through 13, through Nigel, through Robert, and then we was debating it. Andrew Thurkel at Hull won't mind me saying, because I think it's already been out there, but at the previous meeting at Lee had said that he might have some other suggestions where we may well eradicate loops, but not necessarily increase teams. And everybody's entitled to their opinion. We're all intelligent people to a certain level, and we've all got different abilities. That, you know, there's people in there that I would ask advice on certain things, and vice versa. So it could well have been that at the end of that meeting, we were no further. You know, we just didn't reach any kind of general consensus to go into the formal meeting to actually then be able to do the legal requirements to affect the change. So it would have been a bit of a pointless kind of press conference to be coming out and saying, well, guess what? You know, we've done nothing again, and we still don't know. We're none the wiser, which would have looked a bit, you know, naff really. And all you guys who spent money going there, you know, there's not a lot of questions. So it is difficult. I think Nigel has done some media, as I understand it, around that. I felt, based on our media team, in particular Terry, I just asked him, you know, what's the sense check out there? I genuinely don't get time to be looking at social media. I sometimes look at some notifications. I have fun on that. I'll fire missiles. I like to use it for raising money and things like that for people. But generally, I definitely don't look at what anyone else is putting on there. If I'm tagged in something, sometimes I look. Most of the time, I don't. But there's people out there who have my best interests, who are paid to do that. People who are friends who do that, who will screenshot something, send it me, and say this is somebody he's dealing with. But one this morning, somebody's not got an email regarding the shirt that they purchased, so I'll quickly look into that, and that gets resolved. But just on the 14 teams, I don't want to hijack this and just talk loads of waffle. I want you to ask the questions and need to give you quick answers. Yeah. But just before we do, there's a couple of things that I want to set out there, right? Because it'll help. In 2020, Lee went through the same process, if you will, that's now being set out for two other people, with the chair of that panel that selected Lee being the same person. Okay. Now, before we entered into that process, Ralph Rimmer presented to all championship clubs, because the championship clubs are basically looked after by the RFL. Ralph Rimmer was the CEO. Karen Morehouse sort of is next in line. two very respectable people. People can have their opinions on them, but in my opinion, two very respectable people who I'm still in touch with now. And if I was building, a war cabinet, what is the best representation of people that I can pull together to run something, both of them people, as well as Nigel, would be in it. People can make of that what they want. Ralph presented to the clubs that Super League had been in touch with an opportunity to replace Toronto rather than run with an 11-team competition. It was late in the day, but they felt that they should give an application process, and they came up with the mechanics of which it would be done. And we would receive, the winning bid would receive £1 million central funding. The importance of that is everybody else got 1.55. And Ralph Rimmer said to us at the time, if you wish, I can go back. I think they need a 12 team, right? And I can go back. It's my gift to go back to them if you so wish and say that nobody's interested in applying on £1 million. It isn't right. We want the same level of funding. Okay. I said, please don't do that because I'm happy to go in for nothing. I just want a shot at it. We'll get bigger crowds. We'll get bigger commercial revenue and we'll have a crack. At that time in the process, we had John Duffy as coach, and our team that year was 2/3 of a Super League team, if you will, that we had. And the idea was to do what we did in 23 with Lammy and coast through and then add a few to it along the way towards the end and have a team ready for Super League when we got in, which we went forward and did. Now, I labelled it at the time as being like stood outside of Morrison's with £100, while everybody else, the other 11 teams, went into Morrison's with £155, and they all got everything they wanted. And then when they'd finished, they let me in with me £100 to buy what was left. Right? I still stand by that, okay, because at the end of the day, that's what it was. But bear in mind that application deadline was the 30th of November at 7:30 a.m. And we found out, I think it was the 18th of December, somebody will correct me on that, but it was late in December when we got told we were the team that went in, by which time you're already in your pre-season training. Yeah. So that was difficult. We still won a couple of games. COVID obviously hit everybody in the March. That stopped any overseas players coming. That stopped me being able to significantly change my team, how I would have done. But nonetheless, we were competitive and we completed the season. The reason I want to just deal with this little bit and add a little bit to it now is important. You'll see why. In that season, various teams didn't go to Catalan, various games didn't get done, and it was a kind of win percentage. And at the time, there was Leigh, Salford, Huddersfield, and OKR and Wakefield. There were 5 teams languishing at the bottom when this process I'm going to talk to you about started. And we felt that it was a bit of an unfair, or let's just say it wasn't an integral competition because of some of the games not taking place and which ones wasn't. I think Salford went and murdered Cassie, who arrested some people. And there was a bit of, it just didn't feel right. But at the time we started this meeting, those 5 teams were all on basically nothing. Any of us could have been gone. We held a meeting at Ken Davies' offices in Huddersfield. Ralph Rimmer was there, Karen was there, the 5 clubs I've just mentioned were also there. And we were tasked by the Super League owners, if you will, to come up with a way, right, of seeing how we could avoid relegating anybody, right? Now, the gift of promotion and relegation is not within the Super League owners' remit, Super League Europe. That is purely and simply an RFL matter. They decide whether or not they promote or relegate anybody. It's only them who can stop that. There was no way would Ralph even consider, nor would I even have been part of anything that partway through the season told the championship clubs that guess what, you're not coming up because COVID stopped it being fair. I'd have gone berserk, right? So the answer was 14 teams, right? The issue was finance because the other clubs are not going to vote in favour. And what we came up with was that basically there's money obviously goes to the top 2 teams in the championship. So we take that and we add that to the Super League. At the time, there was a parachute payment of 500k. Well, if you're not relegating anyone, you're not using that. So we put those together. A couple of other bits and bobs. It was kind of heavily me driving this sort of idea. And we all bought into the fact that ultimately, whoever finished 12th would only get the $1 million funding that Lee had got, right? And the 13th and 14th team would be the two grand finalists. Both would get promoted, not just the winner. But they would only get £1 million, right? And we felt that if we went to, I think it was Toulouse and Featherstone with the front runners, amongst the others, and said, there's a guarantee here and now to take this, well, you're both guaranteed £1 million. That whoever, all of Championship would have voted in favour of that, because you'd rather know you've got a better chance of going in with $1 million, 2 places, than one at 1.5 and missing out. So that's what we came up with. We presented that. Obviously, it was time of COVID, so it was all this Zoom things. Me and Dukes sat in front of a computer in my meeting room at AB. During which period of time from agreeing that that was the proposal we should present, Ken Davey was the interim chair of Super League as well, by the way. We went to a presentation during which time people had got a couple of wins, and Lee were 4 points adrift. All right, with 5-6 games to go or something. So basically, we looked doomed. When that proposal was put forward, the other 4 clubs that agreed to present it with me all voted against it, their own proposal, right, of going to 14 teams. That was the chance of going to 14 teams. And I think it was about a 25 grand cost to each. And I said, listen, if Toulouse come up, which they ended up doing, you'll lose 25 grand by not having Lean and the away fans that we bring to you, and the beer sales, etc., and it'll cost you to go to Toulouse. So you're actually, making a bad decision. They voted against it. I was furious. I said, I cannot believe that. I walked out of the Zoom, and my parting words were this: I will be back, and I will replace one of you in here. I guarantee it, and I'll replace you for good, because I will take a place in Super League with a team and stay in. And that's what I went and did. And we rebuilt, we got Lammy, and the rest is history, as you know. Wakefield with a team that ended up getting going, change of ownership and everything, been great for them, and that's a different story, and they're a massive story. Matt's good. So that was when, ever since then, 14 teams has been discussed. I did get back up there, as I said I would, after with the 1 year, and have stayed there. So it's always been a thing to have a 14 team situation. The issue, the block to it, has always been the money side of it. So it was the first time it got presented, kind of using those old ideas to come up with a similar situation and combine those processes of Lord Kane, lower funding, and get to 14 and remove the loops. So that's just some background on it.
Yeah. But on that, I mean, as I'm listening to that, and I get this bit around funding and money, but I mean, as you know, and as all the owners know, because they're all successful businessmen, you've got to speculate to accumulate. I think everybody would agree 14 teams, no loop fixtures is a better look for the competition. We want it to be competitive, of course we do, but 14 just sits right because the loop fixtures go, it should be more competitive. It's very disappointing to hear. And this is, again, there's a lot of noise around this, that the self-interest of clubs comes at the detriment of our game. We've seen the central funding pot drop year on year on year. And what you're talking about there is for 25 grand, which is a drop in the ocean to a club, for 25 grand, a rough shot decision was made not to go with the 14 team proposal back then. Now, as a fan, and I'm sure the people who are watching, you sit back and you look at that and go, for 25 grand. If it was for 25 million, you're thinking, I can sort of see that. It's 25 grand. I'm not being funny. I mean, and that's where I think some fans get a bit frustrated because, you've got to speculate to accumulate. We went Vegas. That was a speculation to accumulate. 25 grand. We should have been 14 teams already then, shouldn't we? You agree with that stuff?
Bring the questions out, mate, and then no one gets frustrated.
Let's go.
Dave, can I just chip in with one quick bites on that topic? Can you just clarify for everyone, Derek, in terms of the 2026 season and funding, will the 13th and 14th club receive less funding this year, or has that not been decided yet?
Yeah, that's the worst case scenario is the scenario we know for a fact. So if the dial doesn't move on Sky, for example, we've now got a different proposition next year. The dial might change in terms of what revenue we generate on this additional round per week. If it does and other things become better, then it'll be, the ideal solution is parity. Anyway, that's the first point of call. And then secondly is actually increased funding to all clubs. But the thing that we know for now is the figure we can guarantee both clubs without affecting the central distribution to the other clubs, and that was, a paramount part of getting it through. That figure is being finally tuned to concluded, but we kind of knew in the meeting it was between A and B. I'm not going to say what that is because I don't think it's right for me to do, but what I will say is it's above 66%, which is what I got. All right, so it's north of that, I'll tell you that much. And it's important, therefore, that you can't just say teams 13 and 14 go in, because it needs some investment on top of that to have a sustainable club. We can't face another Toronto situation, or even a situation that we've got with Salford. So it's being determined. It'll go out with the application along with all the other terms and conditions along the lines of what I got. And just on that, I didn't say, when I did the application, the first thing I did was hold a meeting here in this room that I'm in now at home with the operational board members. And we looked at that application paper and we considered every element of the pillars that you needed to meet. We then looked at which other clubs we thought would also do it, and where we stood in it, because it was going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money. And would it be damaging to the club to go up with the team that we had compared to the plans that we had by waiting a year and going up and getting full money and knowing we'd get promoted? And in that paper, interestingly enough, I sent Ralph Rimmer an email, and it's all noted, and I'm going to display this actually at the right time. It's in a Word document. I'd forgotten about it. Sean got it when I was in a meeting with Ralph and Nigel just before, on the Friday before this, on the Monday, just fine-tuning some things. And he said, "Is this what you're looking for?" I was looking for the pillars of the application process from last time, because obviously it makes sense to work around modifying that for this time. And the document he found, in that summary, which was fully minuted by me, I actually put that I felt that document, that bidding paper, was purely and simply a mechanism as a vehicle to use to put Bradford into Super League, right? Because the ex-chairman was now the owner of Bradford. That was my paranoia, so I understand everybody else's no, right? And I wrote in that the top four to apply had been moved to top six. The only team that would apply that hadn't finished in the top four was Bradford. The finance pillar had been shortened to 3 years for any kind of liquidation or winding up orders. Had been shortened to a 3-year pillar, whereas everything else was 5. But Bradford had suffered an insolvency after 4 years, so I felt that had been shortened so they could still apply. And I made that clear, and I really thought that's what was going to happen, right? And I was wrong, because it was a fair, robust process, and law came pit league.
Is this the main reason, Derek, why the IMG, why it's not just a straight the 14 IMG top 14 teams in the IMG rankings, because there is other implications such as reduced funding and financing and stuff like that, and whether they can be a sustainable club, and they need to evidence that to the committee?
If it was changing to 14 teams and everybody was getting exactly the same money, and we knew that now, or we was just dividing the money available to the sport by 14 and everyone was taking less, then you would just have to use the 14 team IMG model. Of course you would,
Yeah.
but it isn't that. And it may well be. There's a strong argument that the IMG. I've said all along, I don't think you should get promoted or relegated into Super League based on a spreadsheet and not know where that's at until as late as October or whenever it is. I just disagree with it. But at the same time, I've been promoted into Super League by winning a grand final against Whitehaven at Widnes in 2004 for the 2005 season. I've been promoted through winning through the middle eight, where 4 Super League clubs played, 4 Championship clubs, and we finished joint top with Leeds. And I've been promoted off a piece of paper from a bid out of a boardroom. So I'm in a position where I've done it every single way. Nobody else has. So the big issue is the not knowing and the uncertainty. Now that obviously comes by winning a grand final, because until you've won that grand final, you don't know. So you can't recruit till then anyway. So all this, talk of it's too late, how can anybody recruit, blah blah blah. Well, guess what? The two teams that are coming up will know they're coming up before the grand final's played. So they'll know earlier about recruiting than they would if they come up via promotion or relegation. And we do need to find a vehicle of still having promotion and relegation. So it's a tough one. But I think anybody who's positioned 13, 14, 15, 16 in IMG would likely have the best opportunities, because it goes without saying that if you're that high up the table, it's because you've been competitive within the last 3 years. It's because you're financially sound. It's because you've got good facilities. All those pillars are good pillars. They're good markers for us to measure our clubs by. Anyone who's invested in a screen and LEDs, that'll all be part of it. It was all part of my bid. I'll happily share a lot of that, and I'll share it with any club that wants to. Two have already asked, and I've done that.
Superb. Now, you mentioned something. We had a lot of questions coming on this, so let's address this, because you've just touched on it, so we may as well do it now. Nigel Wood, okay. The optics, again, sensationalism, is that Bradford are coming up. No matter exactly your paper back then, that Bradford are coming up, and people from the outside looking at Odsal and the state of Odsal as a optics for TV, and Odsal is in a poor state by Odsal standards, and people are questioning. Don't say that again.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah, right. So if we want the sport to have eyes on, and we want the optics right, yeah. I mean, Bullmania was amazing, but we're a long way away from Bullmania. A long way away from it. A lot has changed since then. So there's a lot of skepticism that this, especially Nigel's appointment, that one of the teams, no matter what, will be Bradford. One of the teams, no matter what, will be London, because Gary Everington's gone there. As somebody, as you say, skin in the game, you're in these discussions. Are you confident that any team that is appointed into Super League will be done correctly, and full transparency will be shown as to why that has happened?
I'm 1,000,000% certain of that. And Bradford, when I did my bid back then, there was a video knocking about. I don't know who'd done it, but somebody had got into Bradford, because it was closed down. Remember, Bradford was playing at Dewsbury.
Yeah.
And somebody had gone in and done some filming, and it was like it was almost like coming back to the earth after it's been wiped out by a pandemic, and like you're the last person alive walking around it. That's what it looked like. And I was sending that into Ralph and saying, how on earth can they even put a bid in? Now that in itself tells you there's a problem with IMG, doesn't it? Because the scoring at Bradford now, as I understand it, have got the 1 point for the stadium, for the facilities, because they've got a gantry that's big enough. They've got this, they've got that. Whatever the bits were that they didn't get last year, they've now got a big screen, and they've now got some LEDs. I haven't been there, but it's what I'm told.
Yeah.
So straight away, off last year's figures, if nobody else has moved, because it's difficult too, and I don't see much changes in those that are at the bottom. Don't be surprised if Bradford haven't made the 12. Don't be surprised if Toulouse haven't made the 12. Even York were close, I think.
Yeah,
London, I think London was 14th, were they?
Yeah.
You can't question the ability of Gary Edmington. He's ran one of the best clubs from top to bottom for as long as I've ever been involved in rugby league, way back from 2001, 2002. He was someone, you sat and looked to respect. Is that what London's always been missing? Can he attract the right investment? I genuinely don't know. What I do know is that Lord Kane is, well, one, he's a lord for a reason. Two, he did detailed negotiations in all the Northern Ireland stuff. He loves rugby league and he's passionate about it. He's working for nothing, again, on the strategic review panel and on the board, as are all of that panel, who are now also all non-exec directors on the board, all for nothing, whereas that previously wasn't the case. There's a lot of costs been wipes there which can come into these other clubs. I know without any shadow of a doubt that that man would not in any way, shape or form listen to any outside influences, listen to Nigel, right, or anybody else, and he will produce a decision with the other people who are high quality individuals, and one that he knows if he was legally challenged on, he can stand up and defend that decision in a court with facts. That's what I know for certain, because that's the man he is.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Right. Let's touch on TV, because there's been a lot of conversations around the TV. So let's try and box the TV element of it off at this juncture. First and foremost, we've had quite a few people ask this. Before we get to the TV, so let's see. One question's coming on Nigel as well that you can clear up. John H on YouTube. Does Nigel's appointment comply with Sport England funding regulations? Is what John's saying.
Does what? Sorry.
So does Nigel's? What he's asking? Does Nigel's appointment comply with Sport England funding regulations?
Yeah, it does. Let me tell you a couple of things here. First and foremost, right, when we made the decision that, and a unanimous decision at a meeting that I wasn't at Wigan, was reached by the owners of Super League to replace the chair. Effectively, we felt that we was the most overgoverned sport in danger of going bust. So it's one thing having great governance, and I'm not criticising individuals here, that people are good at what they're good at. Right? We were overgoverned. We faced big issues regarding brain health and this insurance claim, extortionate insurance costs, right, which have reduced significantly through that good work. So that does get attributed to those people, because it was on their watch. But it was affecting other things. Now, when I had a meeting at Leeds in which Nigel was present, as was Simon, who was the chair at the time, and one of the non-exec board members, and I said in that meeting, right, if I've got a business that receives some funding from a body that wraps handcuffs around my business that affect it making more money and bringing in more money because of the rules they enforce around what they put in, I would get rid of them. Simple as, right? And go and do what I'm doing. And the non-exec director said, that's talk of an entrepreneur. I said, and that's what the game needs, right? So, of course, Sport England's massively important to rugby league, in particular. You know, the work the RFL does and the money it gets for grassroots, amateur, everything else that it deals with, right? The 3-4 million quid, right? The biggest investor in rugby league is the combination of the owners. Simple fact, bigger than Sky, right? The combined funds put into the game annually is the owners. That's not a good thing for me to be saying, by the way. Right? That's not something I'm proud of. I think it's great. I think it's terrible. But that's the fact, right? So that's where you need to be listening. That's who's more important. But of course, we're not going to do things stupidly that affect getting 3-4 million from Sport England. So Sport England do not run rugby league. Sport England have zero say over what the RFL do or what we do. They have rules and regulations around where they will invest their money and on what terms and conditions. And that is that you comply with your own rules as a business. That's one of them. And our own rules in our business state that you cannot be appointed chair, whether it be interim or not, within 12 months of being involved with the club. That was the rules. That was within our articles of association. Okay. So that was the issue that was used a lot by the executive to frustrate the Nigel situation, because there's an internal power struggle. There's maybe a couple of clubs were getting things how they wanted it, let's just say, with the regime that was there. So then didn't want to see that regime change all of a sudden once that started to happen. I'm not going to get involved in any names, but that's just what I know. So there was some frustration around that. So we had a council meeting, the correct way of doing it. All the members, bar one, right, voted to make that change. Okay, so our articles changed, so there isn't a period now. So therefore, we're not breaking our own code therefore we're not affecting Sport England's code. And Nigel's met with Sport England. Nigel's got an OBE. That's given by the government for his services to rugby league. So there ain't no problem with Nigel being there in their eyes, and we're not breaking our rules. So, Sport England's fine.
Fair enough. Now, in terms of Sky, now off the back of your interview at Lee, there was, by all accounts, Sky aren't happy. Sky aren't happy with Super League. Sky aren't happy. Pardon? Aren't. So by all accounts, based on your, I don't know if you saw it, I know you don't do social media, but I'm guessing off the back of your interview at the Lee channel, there's a few things floating around because you mentioned this 500 grand to cover the extra games in 2026. And the headlines were Sky aren't happy and demand answers as to why you guys have made that decision, almost that they wasn't consulted and that they're going to be very disappointed.
That's completely incorrect.
Thoughts on that?
That's completely incorrect.
Fabulous.
Has Sky said that anywhere?
No, I think
why do people pay attention to nonsense that people put out as headlines? There was one taken from part of that interview and made into something that was nothing like what I said. And people need to be careful when they take one bit out of something and take it out of context and mislead. It's called misrepresentation, right? And I am getting to a point where I'm going to whack one or two of them people, right, with a legal paper, right, because it's time to happen. All right. When you see Johnny Davidson emailing the RFL over a comment Andy Mays made, right, people think we shouldn't have a right to speak and we shouldn't be on social media. Right, it's unprofessional, that. Well, it's unprofessional because we stand up for ourselves. It's unprofessional because we don't like people taking our words out of context and then blowing clickbait headlines that are rubbish. That series about rugby league is the biggest nonsense I've ever seen. Why anybody ever clicks on anything to do with that, I don't know. And then you get you get Gavin at the RFL, whose job is head of compliance, who I should only really be dealing with over, testing you, whacking someone late and getting a grade C and saying, yeah, okay, it is, or no, I don't think it is, and arguing it, is writing as if he's almost sat there watching it. Within half an hour of Andy Mays putting a tweet out, gets an email off Gavin reminding him of the social media policy, because Johnny Davidson's making a complaint about something he's put to Gavin Wilson. It's like, and then Andy Wilson, then Johnny's messaging Andy saying, what's been done to Andy Mays, what's been done about this tweet, have you done anything? So Andy Wilson's messaging Andy Mays saying, hey, I'm just letting you know, Johnny Davidson's been on asking what's going on, so I'm letting him know you've had a kind of a warning. What's all that about? Who's Johnny Davidson? Apart from being Phil Kaplan's son, who is it? Why do any of us need to be answerable to him? Not whatsoever. So he can have whatever opinions he wants. He can get his information from whoever he wants. I know where he does, but that's up to him. As can any. If you want to look at anybody on there, like you guys, who looks positive, probably go and have a look at Matt Shaw. That's where Dukesy, for example, Dukesy knew the outcome of that vote before he spoke to me, because I was busy on the phone with lots of other things on my way driving back, and I hadn't spoke to him. And when I did, he said, I've seen on Matt Shaw's Twitter. That's where he goes and has a look, because generally Matt's pretty accurate. He doesn't sensationalize things. He doesn't clickbait stuff with false headlines. He's in contact with people in the sport like myself, like agents. He'll contact me if he's got rumor of a signing and see if it's going to be damaging to the relationship, or if it's going to affect that actually going through. And equally, when if he has got something and he is respectful with you, you give it him as the exclusive at the right time. That's how you behave as a decent journalist, and that's how you get the relationships. Has he done things that will upset me along the way? 100%. But that's his job. That's the media's job, is to find out the information for the fans and put it out there. So put it out accurate. Sky have not been in touch with Rodri or with the RFL, to my knowledge, as an owner, which I think I would know if that was the case. Nigel was at our game on Friday night. They whacked him up there on the big screen, Sky. Brian Carney interviewed Fitzy. Nothing was said there, oh, Sky aren't happy. The 500k got raised because within the figures that kind of worked out how we could do it without costing us money and give a figure to the other clubs. A club raised the question of, what about the cost of producing these additional games, because it's not within Sky's contract to have to do it, which was a very good, well-made point, okay, of 500,000. And I said, I don't think that's an objection to it, because that's risk averse, which is fine, because that's looking at what would go on that side of the balance sheet. What I'm going to talk about is what comes on the other side of the balance sheet when you pay the 500 grand for producing the other game each round. So 20, you know, we've got 26 rounds without Magic, so we've got 26 games to sell effectively, because while Sky don't have to produce them, they ain't got them to show neither. All right, so that's the opportunity. So I said, I'll happily pay the 500k for that. So let's take that out of the argument. But I want the 500k back first, and then 500k for doing it. And after that, it can go into the waterfall. To which obviously a few people are like, no, that's not right. And I'm like, of course it's not. So you know it's going to make money, don't you? Otherwise you wouldn't be bothered. You'd be happy for me to have that, because I'm running the risk. So we all know there'll be more than 500 grand made producing those games. Another comment I've seen made, which was raised in the meeting, Peter Hutton is the non-exec Super League Europe director who chaired the official meeting, because he's chair of that. And he is, that's what he does. He's a broadcast negotiator. He's an expert in that field. Okay. He advised us that he thinks it's highly unlikely that Sky are looking at paying more money. But they have paid more money for 3 sports. I think it was darts, Formula One and cricket. And the interesting point is they paid more money for all those 3 sports, because all 3 of those sports they risked losing to DAZN. So I said, well, thanks for that, Peter, because that's very useful, because that tells me wherever there's competitive tension, they don't lose the sport, they pay the right price to keep it. What we've never had in rugby league is competitive tension. They know what DAZN's into and what it's not. They know if it's not into rugby league, but they don't know what we're into. They don't know what us as an owners group are prepared to do. They don't know how successful Super League Plus is being or can be. Yeah. So this is a stepping stone, right? It won't happen because people won't be as brave as I would. But I would say to Sky, I don't expect you to cover these games, right? We're gonna do that to the same standard, and because I don't believe it costs what's said anyway. I think it's madness to keep putting wires in my stadium and then take them out and then put them in the week after and then take them out. You just invest in hardwire all the stadiums. So I don't think it ultimately ends up being that. I think there's so much more content we can add to it as well. And this is a stepping stone. We can find out just how much value there is in a live game of rugby league that you can't get anywhere other than coming to one place. That's the opportunity that this has created for us. And if I was Sky, if I was sat as the MD of Sky Sports, I would be fearful of that, right? Because ultimately, if another channel exists, right? And I'm talking to people in America that was originally talking about doing this ultimate rugby, which involved breaking away. We don't need to break away now. We've now got a forward-thinking, open organisation where we can make changes within and keep the great bits. These people are now interested in basically buying the rights for the sport. And they will pay more than what we're currently getting. That's guaranteed. And I'm going to be investing in that as part of that business, because they know that Sky's own figures are 120,000 people's primary reason for subscribing to Sky is rugby league. So the survey that I wanted to put out there, which is going to come out, isn't so much. Listen, let me give you some truths here. When people send surveys out with 10 questions, there's probably only one of them they really want to know the answer to. But you don't just say that, because then it's obvious. So you fluff it with a load of other questions. It doesn't really matter. The main answers to the questions we already have from ING. It wasn't from that long ago. So we know everybody hates loop fixtures. It was the biggest part of the survey, right? That's why their immediate recommendations was to get rid of loop fixtures and to get rid of Magic Weekend. And then it was only the resistance of sort of fans, etc., liking Magic, and they changed it, and obviously all the loops stayed in. So the only thing we've ever done to do with ING is the grading. That's all we've taken from it. So you know the actual level of what that sport is worth is already known there, that brings in 100 million. Okay, the production costs at Sky say 30 million. I don't think that is the case, but it might be the case for them, but it doesn't need to be the case. So it's like saying, the NHS loses loads of money. Well, probably because it's ineffective in how it spends its money. So anybody can come into my business and find things I'm not doing right or wasting. So the fact of the matter is that sport is worth more than we get for it. Sky are a fantastic partner in a lot of ways. If it wasn't for them, we would not be the full-time professional sport that we currently are. But do these shiners in the best picture coming on with coverage 5 minutes before the game starts? I don't think so. No. Is it a good look when you've got Brian Carney turning around and saying, do these owners know what they're doing? No. But I'll get criticised if I say the Sky know what they're doing when our big screen in the stadium isn't working and nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows how long's left in the game. Nobody knows whether it was a try or no try. Nobody knew what was going on in the last 7-8 minutes of the best finish to 7 and 8 minutes you'll see the almost sell out in the stadium. So, I don't criticise Sky. I just criticise the value that we get for our sport. And that's our fault, not theirs, because they will naturally try and get the best deal they can. And they have, because there's no competition to it, managed to get a great deal for themselves. That's going to change. And this is an opportunity to step towards that change. If I'm them, I'm coming in, I'm saying, Nigel, listen, let's produce that additional game. Let's change how it looks. You've changed something. You've got a new format. You've got more games. Let's just say that there's 2 French teams in, or let's just say that the French team agrees to play on a Friday night at 7 o'clock France time, which means you've got a live game at 6 o'clock on a Friday and 8 o'clock at a Friday. That's giving Sky something new. That's changing. And we're giving them extra games. And, the Challenge Cup that, is currently the BBC's can become a magic event over 2 days. You've still got that. That's something new for them. An Nines comp, which I know some people want to talk about, that's something new for them. So why would Sky not turn around and say, we don't want to take the risk of that game being exclusive. We want it. We will rewrite the contract to cover the production of it. We're going to pay extra because something's different now. And we like it. We like the other things that need to also still be discussed yet and changes, but might be to do with rules and different things. You try, try. Yeah. We've all got opinions about it. That's the RFL's gift. That will then create something that looks different. And why wouldn't they rewrite 26 and at the same time get 27, 28, 29? It's no different than me going to Bailey Hodgson, as an argument's sake, who's contracted for next year, right? Who's going great. And next year, the money he's on, if I change that, which I don't have to do, but if I change that now before anybody else is technically supposed to be allowed to talk to him, not that I don't believe that's absolutely right, but technically they're not. If I go to him, and let's just say, I'm not giving you accurate figures here, but let's just say Bailey's on £60,000, right? Didn't play last year for half of the year when he came, a reserves game away at London. Let's just say he's on 60 grand. Right, and he's at the end of next year, he's up. At the moment, no one can talk to him. If I said, Bailey, right, I think you've proved to, you're better than what you were, what we think. I think you're an 100 grand player. So I'm going to change your contract next year, right, in 26 to 100 grand a year. But I want 27 and 28 adding to it at 100 grand a year. Right? He signs it, right? Because he's getting more money now. Right, so we need more money as a sport to give each team the same amount of money, and then to have a bit of extra money, not too much, and use the rest to put the infrastructure and hard wiring in. That is what I think is genuinely possible, and we'll see how much Sky really do value us. And the fact of the matter is, if they don't, we'll know that now. We'll know that in the next month, 2 months, and then that gives us the rest of this year and all of next to get our house in order to be able to do whatever it is that we've got to do, or take an offer from somewhere else. But at the moment, we can't take anything from anywhere else until after 27. Yeah. We can listen to people. They can come in and say, don't do a deal with Sky. Don't do a renegotiation with Sky because we want to give you 100 million. That ain't going to happen either. But what I'm saying is, it's in Sky's gift, like me with Bailey Hodgson, in contract, that's when you renegotiate your new contract. And according to Peter Hutton, that is highly likely and happens a lot in the sport. That's when Sky should do it. And that's what I would hope becomes the big good news story. And I won't be a I told you so or a Nigel, I told you so. But Nigel Wood did the biggest deal ever that this sport's had for zero commission. And people criticising for being correctly paid off out of his employment because we wanted rid at the time, because we wanted to break Super League away, and he was the fall guy for it. And that proved to be wrong. And I was a casting vote that saw him go. And I made a mistake. And we went full circle at the Robert Elstone, etc. era. And, you know, the private equity wasted 850 grand on all of that. And nobody moans about, you know, that company walking away with £850,000 for nothing, right? And the private equity company went bang months after. Nobody talks about Robert Elstone's exit or what he got for what period of time he was in the sport. What you know, did he get an OBE? Did he do a? I'm not criticising Robert, but you know, did he do a 40 million TV deal or any TV deal? We paid consultants left, right, and centre to get us a lower deal at Sky.
Yeah. On the topic, you know, and Bazza, you know, on his 40th birthday, he's banging, you know, he's banging in some questions for you. He's on about the NRL. Let's try and cover this in a league. You mentioned America. Bazza there talking about NRL, potentially somebody who might come into the game. There's been talk about Saudi Arabia, you know, Middle Eastern money coming into the game. Do you see that as a real opportunity? I mean, to create this almost bidding war, which is what we need, because it'll drive the price up. From where you're sat at the moment, do you believe that there could be these players coming in for a contract?
All of that, all this NRL thing was all a part of frustrating the Nigel Wood process, right? While I was in Vegas, I got a phone call off an owner saying that they'd had an informal chat with Peter V'landys and somebody else who was there. About, you know, because of course Super League was there and the NRL were there. And by the way, we looked like the poor relations. It was like a curtain raiser. It was like the 1895 Cup before the Challenge Cup final. You know, after our game had gone on, there's jets flying over the top. There's all sorts. It's ramped up. It was like, it just made us look poor, I felt. NRL everywhere, leaflets how to stream their stuff, nothing to do with us. But that's sidetracking. So there was a bit of a chat. And it was almost a case of we should be careful about, you know, what we're doing and this Nigel thing or whatever, because you know, they might not be too keen on him. Well, I'm not really too bothered about that, but you know, if the NRL want to get involved with us, why? Yeah, because they see a distressed animal, maybe they see something vulnerable, or is it because the Foxtel has been took over by DAZN and they've got to renegotiate their deal at the same time as ours at the end of 27. DAZN's big on Europe, DAZN's big on French. DAZN, wherever it buys a sport, wants all of the sport. IMG sat and presented to us at Lee and said if DAZN were to get involved, they would immediately want to take Super League Plus as part of it. So that, you know, that's gone. They've got everything. So it's therefore would strike me as being obvious that the NRL, if they also acquired or had control of Super League, they've then got the full thing to sell to DAZN and get a better thing. The facts, not the paper talk, not, you know, at the same time as that, you got the chair of the International Rugby League Federation coming out and being critical of Nigel Wood. You know, there was an absolute campaign against him and everything around it. Ridiculous. Right? It was orchestrated and structured. Open letters from this, that, and the other with no names on. Could have come from me. You know, absolute nonsense. But the as I say, an owner had allegedly, you know, they'd had these conversations. Not allegedly, they had these conversations, right? So, as an owners group in an office in Manchester, Mills and Reeves, who's Super League Europe's solicitors, we agreed that those two owners who'd spoken already with the NRL should explore that possibility further, along with Nigel, as in terms of, because the RFL are involved, because they're a 13th shareholder and would have to be involved in anything that moved with it, and a couple of other owners onto there. So just like me and Gary were tasked with at Simon's request, just having 2 owners to deal with the process. We went on and did it and delivered what the clubs asked. Those 2 owners were asked to go ahead and take that forward. At the meeting we just had that we're all talking about, it was raised, is there any more news on that? Now, the panel that we put together hasn't had any meeting with anybody from the NRL, hasn't had any conversation with anybody from the NRL, hasn't had any feedback into that panel of 5 from the 2 owners that were discussing with the NRL. So there is absolutely nothing as an owner of a Super League club and a shareholder of Super League Europe, the business that would need to be acquired. I have had 0 information, not 1 word of any conversation, any meeting, any expression of interest whatsoever around Super League. None.
From any, and that includes Saudi, NRL. The only one that you're privy to is the conversations you've had with the American guys that you were discussing Ultimate Rugby with.
I had one. I've got 2 wealthy friends in America who spoke to the fund manager about whether they should invest in Ultimate Rugby, because they was privy to an idea of what I think the game should be and could be. And he said, not only would I advise you to, but I would invest on the fund that he manages, which is huge, right? Or he's part of the management team of it, that big. So I met with him when I was last over there. He wanted me to put together a document, an actual proposal prospectus. I went through 14 teams and I went through 2 10s, the costs and etc. of that. And I engaged with Nigel. Nigel isn't he was the one with the that ever mentioned the Ultimate Rugby. You've got rugby union sat on its knees. You've got rugby league, whatever. Let's grab the sport and call it Ultimate Rugby and kind of overarch rugby. And have this new game. But the legalities, all the issues and stuff around that, just I kind of didn't have the energy and what would happen. The reality was, let's just go put it out to the clubs. If the big clubs don't want to come, others will. The money's going to be there, bigger than what's in there. The players will come to it, just like what happened in darts all them years ago. The players go where the money is. I just call a meeting with all the agents and say, in 27, this is going to be sport. These are going to be the clubs that are in it. This is the money they'll have. Don't sign your players beyond that, because these clubs are going to start signing them now. And they'll be getting bigger contracts with a bigger salary cap. And the game would just migrate. There'd be a lot of legal issues. There's all the other things that the RFL do, etc. So I went a different route. So I know that is a serious potential situation. For me, the real outcome is to get a renegotiated deal with Sky, where we know it works, where everything is, and grow our own channel along the way, so that in the end, Sky always have some content, and we have some content. But what content we do have that we don't use, Abby Akoku came over to me at the end of that meeting and he said, Derek, wow. And he was just sat as an observer, because he's on the board and he's on the strategic review. He didn't contribute to it. He sat and watched it. He said, if that was on TV, I swear to you, it was compelling. You'd be glued to it. And people would see the level of detail of debate, the healthy manner in which it's done. Let's not forget, Andrew Thurkel produced a fantastic document, right? It wasn't just his view, right? It was a very detailed document. All right, a lot of it we already knew, and strategic review had already consulted, but it was put in a real good place, sent to all clubs, and it looked at 10 teams, it looked at 12 teams, it looked at 12 teams we know Luke fixtures, it looked at 14 teams, it looked at the nines competition, and it was very detailed, and it had a lot of facts and figures about what happens on a loop, attendances, so on and so forth. So everybody had that as well, and in the end, there was a few different well, probably two. It came down to simple facts. It came down to pretty much everyone was okay that, yeah, it's 14 that voted, but should it be 26 or should it be 27? And two clubs in the end felt it should be in 27, and I can understand why. And you know, we heard that all this have a longer run into it, longer time to be preparing, etc., etc. If something's the right thing to do, why do you wait to do it? You get it done. There's no disadvantage to doing it. As I said before, they're not knowing the play. They're not knowing who's coming up is earlier knowing who's coming up than waiting for a grand final in promotion and relegation.
With regard to, that's great. I mean, and Baz sends his thanks for clearing up the NRL bit. He also wants you on final whistle tonight, but I think you've given us enough of your time, Derek. So I think we can probably swerve that one for you, mate. But what I would say, just on the TV, again, frustrating. A lot of people are talking about this as well. We've talked about it a lot on our Super League Raw Weekly show this year. When these TV deals were negotiated, as fans, and I'm really frustrated with Sky. And I'm really at times, and I'm really very frustrated with BBC. So it was decided. I remember you being very vocal. You know, why wouldn't you go? Why wouldn't you move from Channel 4 to the BBC? It's the national broadcaster. Yada yada yada. Did the BBC disclose how many were going to be on the red button? I mean, case in point, you mentioned Friday night's game, Warrington League. The KR League game was box office at the LSV. It was on the red button, and they had a 1950s film playing on BBC Two. Now, that as a fan frustrates me. You talk about value in our game. With hindsight, was that the right decision? And Sky, another one. Why does Sky have a live game on the plus behind the main channels? Yet they'll play last night's highlights on Arena for 2 hours. I mean, again, you're talking about entrepreneurialism. Surely you put live sport on the live channels. As owners, when you're renegotiating these deals, are you going to be holding their feet to the flame this time? Because quite frankly, from the outside looking in, what appeared to be a great move for the sport, I don't believe is delivered, but you might shoot me down on that.
Well, mate, you're 100% right. I've had conversations. As an owner, it affects us when our games are played, right? So if our game, you know, I've been on to Rodri at RL Commercial and said, Rodri, why am I playing on Thursday night and it ain't on Sky? Why? Because welfare-wise, it ain't good because it's a short turnaround, right? So if it's on Sky, I accept it and understand it. Now, when I spoke with Jonathan Litch at the meeting, the MD of Sky Sports, at the meeting at Warrington, where he requested the owners attend, and he attended, and it was good to, you know, for me to say what my feelings were, and him to say that, you know, he felt that they overpaid for the sport with big competition when they paid what they did with Nigel, and I argued that they've underpaid ever since because there is no competition, and he kind of agreed with that and said maybe there's something to look at somewhere else. So straight away on one conversation, the guy's already talking about, you know, finding something. So it came out in that meeting that they hadn't even requested that, right? So I understand. Let's try and give as much rugby. I love having a game on a Thursday night, by the way, because I want to watch rugby every night. So, you know, I'm a rugby addict. So if I can watch a game Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and even on a Monday, I'm happy with that, right? But it does have an effect. So if it's not going to be on TV, we're not going to want to play on a Thursday because that just doesn't make any sense to us, right? So the BBC behind the button, exactly the same. I rang Rodri up and I said, Rodri, if that happens again, they will not come in my ground and film it, right? Because, you know, they literally had a camera fixed on our floodlights, right? That was all it was doing. It never moved. And during all that time, our players are running out. There's fireworks going off. You was there on Friday night, yeah? There's smoke clouds, there's pyros, there's flamers, there's sparkulators, you know, there's lasers, CO2 imitation blasters. I have to use the word imitation because people think the CO2 going off in the stadium now and it's affecting the breathing and they should be 2.5 meters away from it and all this palaver. But that's the fact. What a great display. What a great display. But none of them show it. Sky are all over that, filming that from different angles. Look at this atmosphere. When the last few games that we have played, you can feel watching on TV the atmosphere coming out your telly. You know, the drummers from both bands, I thought Warrington were particularly good. Their fans with the singing, the banter, their drumming, our drummer trying to overdo that. It was absolute, you know, outstanding. And I got home and watched it back, and it was coming out the telly. That's what we should be showing. It shouldn't be behind a red button. It should be there on a main channel. So maybe that's an indicator that they don't really value it and they're not really interested in continuing with it. I don't know. That could be the case. But what I do know is we need to know now, not next year, when there's nobody else in the running and there's nothing else we can do. And we've just said, this is what we're going to do, but we haven't done it again in another 3-year cycle. And then them say, well, tell you what, we'll give you 15 million. And we go, okay, well, we'll have to say that because we haven't got anything other than that. The harsh reality is that if you look at the owners within Super League, right, take Salford out of the situation for a minute, right? Every club would not die if we didn't have a TV deal. It ain't great, right? It ain't great, but nothing ever is. You got to take risk in business, right? Calculated. If you're going to play poker, you've got to be prepared to show your hand if you call a bluff, and that's it. You haven't got one, right? That's the realms. But the best poker players make you think you've got an hand, and you don't want to find out, right? And that's the same in business. I do it every single day. Right? That's the same in business every single day. And this is I'll give you an analogy here from my other business. My main supplier extrudes my products, my tools, my product. I can take them and give them to any extruder in the country, right? And lots of them are always trying to get that. Yeah, I haven't changed in over 20 years. I've never, ever, ever, in all the time I've been in business, moved my tools, right? The same person does them. Every year they fight to get more money, obviously. Right? During COVID, everything went mental because of the oil and, you know, everything just went up in price. But they're a solid supplier. Someone comes in and offers me 3-4% less. No, I stick with where I'm at because everything's superb. But during COVID, things got too silly, and then they tried to hold it there, as everybody would, and not come back once the curve went back the other way. And it simply boiled down to, I kind of, if you will, I don't use the word threaten, but you can perceive it as that. That's what people are kind of saying about me saying whatever with Sky. But it's like this. I said, I'm at a point now, I make enough decking and enough products being extruded to have my own extruders. Right? So it's not something I specialize in. Right? It's like baking a cake. I don't do it, but I can recruit the people who do it, and I can put extruders in the factory because I've got the cash to buy them, and we'll make our own. But bear in mind, not only do you lose me as a customer, you're creating a competitor. Because once I'm making my own decking, I'll start competing to make everyone else's plastics that you also make. So just think of that one. And then prices went to where they needed to be because they knew I was serious, and they didn't want to lose me as a customer, and they didn't want to gain me as a competitor to them. It's similar in this. If as owners we feel undervalued and it's that low, that we might as well take the risk of running with nothing, because it ain't going to be nothing. The 250,000 people that watch a game on Sky ain't going to all of a sudden be happy to just not watch rugby. The absolute worst case is my stadium sells out every single week, no matter what, because you can't watch it, you got to go to it, right? So that ain't going to get me 1.3 million, by the way, right? But if people were paying for, and this is the survey, what I alluded to before, my first question is, are you a Sky TV subscriber? Second question, is your primary reason for watching, for paying for Sky, Rugby League? Third question, if Rugby League was no longer available on Sky, would you still subscribe to Sky? Because that might still be the case, because some people, they're into the football. Yeah. So for me, I wouldn't, right? But some would. And then fourth question, would you be interested in paying for a subscription Rugby League channel that exclusively showed all Super League games live, Championship, some of those games live, and a highlights package for Championship and League One, some Women's Rugby League highlights or live games, match review panel, and things. And there's a list of content of what you might want to see. Would you want to see me taking on Gavin over whether who was it who recently Joe Affingao, whether or not he's hit someone late and should get 3 points and risk missing the OKR game. If I lost, he gets an extra 5 points. Don't play against OKR. He's speaking to Lammy and saying, Lammy, I don't want to try this because I don't want to miss the OKR game. What if we lose? And he's like, you've got to trust in Derek because he believes he can win that one, and we can't just give into it. How good would that be to watch? I can tell you now, and there'll be other good ones, So there's lots of stuff. Referees reviewing themselves, the match review panel, when they sit and decide whether to charge an Offengawi or not, how that process is. We could have amazing content behind the scenes. The documentary Wiggins done on themselves. St. Helens did one in the World Cup Challenge. Behind the scenes, a day in the life of. We could pack that channel with that much stuff, and then it's, would you pay £40 a month? Would you think it's £50 a month? Would you pay £60 a month? I think anyone can pay a tenner a week, £1.50 a day, £1.50 a day. You break it down to that. Just don't go to Starbucks twice in a month.
Well, don't start nicking my strap line. I charge less than a latte a month for great entertainment, mate. Don't start. Come on, Derek. I brought you in. Don't start taking my strap lines.
I've been doing that one for years, mate.
That's what I use. You'll be talking newspapers next, anyway. But anyway, that's by the by. But no, I mean, just to wrap up the TV bit, in hindsight, I think there's a lot of people that are now very disappointed that Channel 4 didn't return. At least Channel 4 did it proper. I thought Channel 4's production of rugby league in 2024 elevated, certainly the BBC. And even though I don't think they'll ever admit to it, I think Sky took a look at it and thought, we've got to raise our game here in terms of what we're doing. Because there was a massive shift. The title suddenly changed and the way they approached it suddenly changed. And we were always going to do that. I'm not so sure about that. I think Channel 4 give them a kick. And they want it to be seen as at least on parity because they'd raised the game. In hindsight, should Channel 4 remained and the BBC, that shouldn't have happened?
I was a bit disappointed. I mean, the BBC's had the Challenge Cup for as long as I've been alive, I think. I mean, if you go back to the days, the only sport you ever saw, we had 3 channels. I remember the launching of Channel 4. We had 3 channels. Whatever the BBC showed of sport, you watch cricket when it was cricket, Wimbledon when it was Wimbledon, Rugby League final when it was that, and the Regal Trophy or those sorts of things, athletics when it was athletics. In your year, like the calendar of sports evolved around the TV being able to kind of show it. The modelling of what I'm speaking to about how I think it should look in America is all of what I just said, plus some spin-off versions of the finer elements of rugby league. People now just want to see the main bits, don't they? I'm a rugby purist. The Wigan game, round 1, 0-0. Yeah, the grand final where Wellesby gets that bouncing off the bar. War of attrition. I love watching 80 minutes of that war of attrition. Yeah. Last night I just watched the last 10 minutes of our game again because I still couldn't work out what happened. Yeah. And because that's the icing bits. So really, in a game of rugby league, there's 2 components in it. There's the whack in the middle carrying the piano to where the boys can play it out the back. Then there's that bit, and we're all always trying to get ultimately in the game, a 3-on-2, a 2-on-1, 4-on-3, whatever, get numbering up wrong, and that's the skill. So there's little spin-offs that can be pulled in and out and pack in a channel. My thing to them was what I said is you always need to give a game a week free to air. Right? Give it doesn't even matter if you get any money for it, right? If it's Channel 4, if it's BBC, not on no red buttons, not hidden behind anything. It's got to be the forefront, and it's got to be on there. For what they do give you for it is a direction to the channel of where you can get more of it. And it's that signpost. So every week you put in the game of rugby league. They only need to see one game, and then people will go to the channel for all the other games. And that's what we should do. And if that's Channel 4, it could well be next year, that you stream that game to our channel and build all these other things into it, and then see how many subscribers you've got at the end of the year compared to what we currently have. You know, how many people subscribe to Super League Plus? What's getting your subscription? You have people subscribing to your channel. You know, what's driving people to that? Things like this, no doubt. Hopefully, you get more members because of the content you put on. It's all about the content.
And it's the community element also. I mean, we pride ourselves on passionate rugby league fans. What something very special about rugby league fans is the fact that we'll all go to a neutral game and watch it together, and nobody's doing what we're doing in that respect. I think the biggest pulling power we've got is that our members socialise together. It's a community in rugby league, and it's quite unique. You know,
on the way home from our game, I shot straight up. I did back from holidays, no secret. I'll do a couple of week detox, get on my bike, drop a bit of weight off, and get to a good place. So at that game, I was just drinking the water, jumped straight in the car, shot off straight after the final whistle. It's interesting because if we'd have lost and I'd have done that, everyone would have been reporting, "Oh, Beaumont shot off fuming because they've got beat." Well, I shot off and we'd won because that's what I was doing. I was getting home quick because I had a big day on the day after, and watched it. On my way home, I rings Dukesy. Yeah, well, obviously, you know, he's away on holiday with his family at the moment, and he sat watching it with two OKR fans. That's just how great the game is. And the two OKR fans was cheering me on. I end up on the phone chatting to two random OKR fans who actually work in the caravan industry at Willoughby. You know, people I know who know black and white fans, and we was having a chat about that. The 25 minutes it took me to drive home, I'm on the phone to two OKR fans all the way home. That's
what it's all about. That's what it's all about. You mentioned the word campaigns about Nigel. I'll just pick that word out. You know, there's a campaign against Nigel. There's also, again, on the wind, and a lot of questions come in with regards to this, French Rugby League and where it sits. There's a lot of noise around the French teams. Should they be in? Should they not? That barriers are being put in place to stop them from coming in, etc., etc. As an owner in the room, is there a drive towards exiting the French teams? Where do you see the French teams going forward?
So first of all, there's absolutely no agenda to get rid of the French teams. In fact, at Lee, in the owners' meeting at Lee, it was talked about that, and people said it would be absolutely downright disrespectful to Catalan, given, you know, what they brought to the table for the amount of years that they have and how long they've been involved in it. That, you know, it would just be wrong, just like it'd be wrong to try and cut that room into 10 and shoot two people out of it for no real good reason. You know, someone suggesting, Huddersfield would be better off in the Championship. Well, would they? Or would they just be better off in a stadium that's the right size for them? Because when they played that game at Dewsbury against Wigan, how good did that look? It was a great atmosphere. It was a great game. So all that's wrong with Huddersfield is it's playing in a big, massive football stadium that it shouldn't be in. So Catalan, personally, I'll just say it as it is. If I owned a franchise of shops and I've got one that wasn't following the branding of it all, wasn't able to comply with all of what our kind of rules are as a franchise, and wasn't actually bringing anything into it, then I'd close it down. And as a ruthless operator, or if a company was in administration and an administrator come in, they'd say that's not adding any value, it's costing, we close it down, and they wouldn't really care about the welfare of anybody because that's their job, right? Catalan, as a business, in terms of Super League, because of its rules, Betfred has to be covered up, who's the title sponsor that pays millions of pounds a year. Sky can't sell its product there, although now obviously through the streaming element they can, but the two games that are not streamed, French people can't get, unless they do it with these dodgy sticks and everything else. But and you know, Jonathan Litch, interestingly enough, accepted that part, you know, that's part of the reason. I know people that subscribe to Sky but also have a dodgy stick, so when they go away they can still watch what they're paying for back home and they don't think they're cheating. And you could argue, and he actually understood that they're not really cheating because they're subscribing, and it's a frustration for them. So in terms of that, naturally, Catalan fans aren't going to come over here every week, every other week. They might pick one game. They don't seem to really bother. Right? So those are the negative elements, because whilst you're not running your business on away fans, away support, like I just alluded to with Warrington, with OKR, with Wigan before that, the atmosphere is generated by two sets of fans singing against each other, raising the atmosphere. That's what creates it, right? So that element lacks. And of course, if I've not got 1,000 Catalan fans in the stadium, I've not got the £20,000 revenue that brings me, and LSV haven't got the secondary spend that enables them to charge us less for having such a great facility that we otherwise couldn't afford. So those are the negatives. Okay, so you can't just ever have one side of an argument, right? So the positives are, most of the positives are what we neglect and don't and haven't capitalized on. All right, the benefit of being a sport that is wider than just England, that plays out in France. The main benefit is the fans obviously love it and they go over there. Catalan put on a great spectacle. You know, the way the setup is, the things that they put on, the flares, the music, the stilted dances, everything going on in and around the square. It's a great trip. They need to focus more on getting flights into Perpignan so that people stay in Canet and it flushes more into their economy rather than Lorette, which is Spanish economy. They need to attract a broadcaster, which is what Nigel was always critical of, because they've never done that. It's massive on Rugby Union. You know, they cancelled the World Cup. Not a great look as well. They only had the 1 year with Toulouse in, so we've never really seen what that actually can achieve if there were to genuine French teams and French derbies. And in terms of getting a sponsor and sponsorship for that. So I don't think it's something you give up on. It would be easy to do that. But I do think it is right to set some targets, some KPIs to be achieved, not just by them, by us as a business, Super League Europe, to achieve, to add more value to Catalan. Okay, so I do think it's right that they don't get the same income as the English clubs, because they're underpinned by what we take to their economy. And Nigel, I haven't read that article even now still, by the way, but I think that's the point he was trying to make, where, you know, he's come out with a figure that of 4 million quid. Well, obviously the fundamental errors in that is it's in Spain, but, you know, he's not that detailed on that. What he's saying is how much money is taken out of the game. If you're a fan and you've got a set disposable income, and you're going to spend it on rugby league, are you going to go to Catalan and watch your team, or are you going to book to the Challenge Cup final at Wembley and you don't even know if your team's going to be in it? Right. So Wembley's taking a bit of an hit off the back of people, Catalan becoming more popular. Fact. Magic's taking a bit of an hit on the back of Catalan becoming more popular. Another fact. So why don't we, right, maximize that? So let's acknowledge that. So let's dictate a little bit of when do the French teams play. Yeah, like I said earlier, so we can give Sky those 2 games. This is Nigel's thoughts, this is Nigel's ideas, not mine. Right. So Nigel's like, why don't we get them to play at 7 o'clock on a Friday? Because if we give Toulouse a participation agreement, yeah, Catalan's expires like everybody else's does in 27. Right. So you could terminate them and you can terminate Toulouse now. And we could go at the next cycle with no French teams. It's not what people want to do. So if you give them a participation agreement and they are accepting of that, the money that comes in through the French element of any broadcast deal or anything like that, the first place it goes to is both of those teams to create them parity with us. If they do a deal with a wine company or a wine sponsor, like which has been done, all that grows, that money goes to them first. And then once they've got the same as everybody else, then it can go into the waterfall. So there has to be an acknowledgement of the costs that they bring to the other clubs and the amount of money that we take out of our economy and our fans' disposable income that they're prepared to spend on rugby league and put in the hands of the French or currently Spanish and the airlines. So do a deal with a Jet2, have 2 teams. My idea, was do you do it where you play Toulouse one week, Catalan the next week, right? Do you do it where two teams travel together? So let's just say I'll pick Leeds, right? Let's just say Leeds play Catalan and Leeds play Toulouse, yeah, and then we both stay over there, and then we play Catalan and Leeds play Toulouse, and we come back, and then both French teams travel over together, and they play what games they've got to do over here, flip, do two, and then they go back. That's to me is just commercial common sense to do it. Then you can go to a Jet 2. You make it where the home games are more in that window of when people are off school. So around the times when kids are off school and people can travel better, summer holidays, Easter holidays, half terms. And you do a deal with a Jet 2, with a Ryanair, with multiple airlines, whatever the case may be. That's how we need to try and monetize the French element of it. And obviously our relationship with Jet2, I've introduced Nigel to Steve Epe, their CEO, to talk about how that can work. There's only so many aircraft that they have. That's why we couldn't do what we wanted to do this year just gone, but hopefully can do next year. But ultimately, that's how you try and generate an income from having the French. So simple answer is everybody unanimously in the room wants to keep Catalans in the competition. We did not want two teams in Super League from France when Super League was only 12 teams, because that's 1/6 of the money straight out the door. It's too heavily represented for those reasons that I've mentioned commercially that don't work. So that was the threat, because we can't control the 12. Nobody can control the 12. If IMG grading says Toulouse overtakes Salford as an example, then Toulouse overtakes Salford, and we've got that. We're stuck with that. So that was another part of the reasoning behind going to 14 teams. So for my liking, let me just put this out there. What if Bradford and Toulouse are in the 12 and Salford and Huddersfield aren't? We don't know. Nobody actually really genuinely knows the answer to that at the moment. And that's why I say, if you're a grade B club that feels you're on that vulnerability part, you must do the application as well. Because, you know, it might well be, if that was the case, it could be argued that Salford might not meet the criteria to be able to come through a Lord Kane process as in their current form as they are now. Huddersfield might be very, very strong, stronger than any of the others, but two have already kind of come in. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff to see what happens here. And this is just the first part of the review process, by the way. There's so much more yet to come as well. That drama is going to be massive when it comes down to it, and the IMG scores are done, and that process starts. The drama around that is going to be TV Gold finding out what makes the 14 teams.
Absolutely, and I think the transparency element as well will put a lot of doubters to bed with regards to all of that. We had John Mellin. We want to go through some of those other bits with you now. We had John Mellin go on. You might like this. He saw no substance from Nigel, you, or Carl, who was obviously not informed. I think he meant Carl Fitzpatrick before the game at Leigh. He was obviously not informed about anything to have confidence that the review is strategic. Just the same old boring cycle of short, knee-jerk plans with history. Which history has shown. Hopefully, this conversation has put all of that to bed.
Well, you think so, because I mean, the word knee jerk is like me deciding now, while I'm on to you, I've got a text off just literally 27 minutes ago from a mate of mine who's a Bolton fan who lives in Norwich, who used to be on the board, saying, "This is great, but are you going to finish in time to come and have a pint with me later and watch Bolton?" Well, I'm not interested in watching Bolton, but I'm interested in having a pint with knee jerk. So I'm going to make a knee-jerk reaction. The missus is, wait, I've got to clean the house. She's just told me this morning she's coming back tonight, not tomorrow. So I'm like, that's knee-jerk, right? We're talking about something that started from finding out when Salford made a request to the other Super League owners for what started out as a loan at the back end of last year. I think it was in November, right? That's when this started. That ain't knee-jerk. Right? No. There's been a lot of processes. You know, I even had to instruct legal representation to fulfil the role that me and Gary were given in terms of getting Nigel into post. That was what the clubs wanted. Certainly the vast majority as council members, not just Super League and Championship, the whole of the game, overwhelming majority of council members voted for that change. And then, it was done. The 14 teams, loops have to go, right? That is, you can do whatever poll you want. I'm telling you now, loop fixtures, fans don't like it. It doesn't create a fair competition. The second game doesn't generate the same number of fans unless for some reason, like St. Helens last year, for us, decided who were in the playoffs, right? That's all factual. So this is based around factual opinion, facts and actual opinion of fans. Want rid of loops. What's dictated to is the number of games we need to play, right? So everything's been considered. If you go to 10 teams and play each other 3 times, it ain't a fair competition. Because if I'm playing Wigan twice at home and someone else is playing them twice away, that ain't fair. Simple as that. Right? Yeah. It ain't fair commercially in terms of which teams you get your homes and away. In terms of, we're a salary cap sport, but we're commercially unfair on who gets what money from where. So the number of games determines 14. You need 14 teams. So what problems does 14 teams present? So it ain't knee-jerk. We looked at what problems 14 teams present. Number of players, blowout scores. Yeah, them are the 2 main issues at the forefront of what needed to be looked at. Well, increase your number of imports. Are you telling me Jack Ferryman couldn't play in any other Super League type team as a starting half?
Well, on that, Derek, because you mentioned Bailey Hodgson earlier, and we've spoke about this. Yeah, with these 14 teams coming in, Ferryman's is the play that we went to on weekly, because Wigan's got a big decision here, because Jack Ferryman is not getting in over Harry Smith or Bevan French in the current climate. It ain't happening. We're going to have 2 new teams with cap space that might look at Ferryman as the player to build a squad around and gets a tickle. So agents are probably rubbing their hands a little bit together in terms of a Jack Ferryman agent, because I think there's no doubt about it. Jack Ferryman, for me, if I'm one of these clubs that he's getting a license, I'm looking at Jack Ferryman going, we've got a chance of getting him at the right money. And that in itself then means that there's a trickle down of talent today. And then it's important through the academy structures, which you now have got, that you keep producing great talent to further fill it up in the future. So do you see those fringe players that at the moment there's blocks there that clubs are going to have to make decisions in terms of giving them a tickle to stay with promises down the line? Loan, because there's a talk, isn't the talk about dual reg and loans, all that's going to be shook up as well. So do you see this might get trickled down?
So the conversation goes like this, right? Exactly what you said there. Now, Wigan ain't going to let Jack Ferryman go anywhere. What, right? Why would they be? He's close to it. You see, the playing games when the opportunity. If you think you've got, I don't think there's any easy games, and I don't think there will be when 2 teams come up. Right. So here's how we went with it. Number 1, there's already a good number of Super League players playing in the Championship who could come back into Super League. We've been outbid for them. Right. I did it in the Championship. You pay more than what someone will play to have a squad player. Right. So if you've got a player you want to keep as your insurance, I like insurance policies, some of these players, right? Some of them, like a Brownie and a Rothwell, who we've got up at Barra, while he's on the fringes at Fev, right? So you take ownership of these players and you loan them out. They're not playing in your reserves. It weakens your reserves a bit, but they'll get better playing there because we know Ryan Brown, for example, will play in our first team. Right? We know that will happen. Okay, Wigan's got more probably than anyone. Saints great with it, Leeds great with it, Warrington great with it. We're growing, but Juicy probably won't mind me telling you, his lads signed for Wigan, right? Because they've got the best structure, but we're behind that, yeah. And I would do the same for my lad if he was good enough to be wanting to be signed at this point by them. Then, so we look at that, right? So there's already Super League players playing in the Championship. Then we're allowing, right, 3 extra players per club from overseas. Now, 2 fundamental problems coming here. One is salary cap, okay, in terms of money, right? and the second was the quota. So we addressed the quota situation. Now here's an idea in Nigel's, again, not stealing it and making it clear it's his, right? When we're talking about this potential problem, and why would Wigan let someone who they see as their future halfback go? Yeah. If you did a season-long loan, so the loans are changing. You don't need dual registration anymore. You can call a player back after a week next year. That's the right way to do it, so you can get movement. But these players need these two teams coming up need players that they know they've got for the year, right? So if the salary cap, which I think it is an issue, if certain clubs want to spend more because now they can bring 10 overseas players in. And by the way, they don't all have to be NRL. Look at the player at Wakefield, the prop, Fertelli. He's lighting it up. You know, Kai O'Donnell, we had Q Cup. Tom Amon, Q Cup. Yeah. So there's lots of them. You've got to find them, right? So if you've got that situation, and I just said, okay, what about if we say, right, that if I'll use, let's just say Farriman, let's use a Farriman. Let's say Farriman's on 60k, right, as an argument. I haven't got a clue, by the way, but let's just say he's on 60k, right? And Wigan are told that, excuse me, Wigan are told that if they allow him to go on loan for the season, he's still their player, right? Because the year after he might be their player, or the year after that he might do it again. The 60 grand naturally comes off the cap anyway because he hasn't played for you. But you get a bonus 60 grand added to your cap. Now, so let's just say, for example, a player that at the moment in our club, Alec Tuatabeke, right? Q Cup player, been going good, but because we could only have 7, we couldn't have him. Now on the salary cap at the moment, it's an issue for us, right? Because we want to keep him, but we can't keep him as it stands, right? With how things work with what money we can spend. But if I know this rules in, I sign him now, right? And then I loan him to, let's just say, Toulouse, right? I loan him to Toulouse for the season. So he's not costing me anything. I'm not breaking the cap. But by doing so, I get 120,000 extra to spend on my cap. So then I can use one of these extra elements to go and get another player. So that will force the hands, if that rule's brought in, that will force the hands of a lot of clubs to each move 3 players that are insurance policies for them to actually bring in, where they've got money, to bring in bigger NRL players. So we can rob the NRL of more talent and start competing with it. So that's how you flush some more players there. So straight away, the 314s when I went to school was 42, right? So we need 60 players, and that's 42. There's at least that can come from overseas. Anybody bringing in is pushing out. If we're all going to flush some talent out that we're using as insurance policies, and there's a minimum of 18 players already in there. Paul Vaughan signed for York for next year, whether they get in Super League or they don't get in Super League. So, you know, there's quality players already there. Making the 2 teams won't be a problem. And we've always had a competition within a competition, haven't we? Let's be honest. Yeah. And, you know, at the moment now, if you've got, because there's no relegation, those fights aren't as important at the bottom. But I remember before the £1 million game or anything like that, Wakefield playing Castleford, and Castle got relegated. It was a hugely watched game. I watched it down in Southampton. So the games will be meaningful. And if we're going to play in, let's just say we've got Bradford in, and let's just say Bradford are a bit weak, they'll be stronger than Salford are at the moment, which is, you know, not Paul Rowley's fault. What they're doing is brilliant. They beat Castleford, they beat Huddersfield. They're having a dig every time they take to the field. But the teams that come in last year was Hull, who was getting caned. But it presents an opportunity for you to play some of your reserve players, give people a bit of a chance. So it's about creating opportunities. The more teams in Super League, being 14 dictates the fixtures. It's not because we think, oh, there should be 14, should be 16. I think there should be 2 10s, but there ain't the players for that to have that as a standard or the money. So 14 is dictated to by the number of fixtures we need to commercially make our businesses work.
Spot on. I mean, a couple of there. I mean, Dawn Baker, a Wigan fan. You know, some teams wouldn't like to produce players. Wouldn't like getting extra funding for loaning players out, as they don't have good academies. I think the answer's in the question: get a good academy so that you are producing the players, so you can loan them out. Here's one for you, Derek. Here's a freebie. I was going to talk to you about this off air, but here's one for you. Love what you've just said. Me and Steph have already spoke about something similar in terms of this, but here's one for you. This would be box office. This would be something for Sky to get involved with. What about a Super League draft of those players so that the teams have to compete for their signatures? They have a pot of money. So Farriman's on the open market as one of those 3 players that Wigan give up. Now it's a draft. Now there's an event like in the NFL. That'd be an event. That'd give a bit more eyes on the game. That'd be a bit fresh.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's some people think that we should go back to regionalising academies. But you used to have your town team, so you couldn't go on. St. Helens can't come and sign people like the league and vice versa. And then you all grow your players in your areas. And then once they get to the age of that, you've got I don't follow NFL, so I don't really know what this draft is, but I've heard about it being taught. But imagine if that was the case, and then when these guys get to sort of 18 and they're becoming pros, it's then open bid. So it doesn't naturally mean they come to league because we've had them till they're 18 because they're from our area. That's when people start going in and getting them. Yeah, creates excitement.
Very conscious on time, so we're going to go. I'm just going to try and get a couple of quick, sharp ones in before because you've been fantastic as always, mate. Really appreciate your time. Promotion relegation, does that stay?
That's something that we want to definitely get keep in the sport. That's part of the next set of discussions. How do we do that? Do we do it every 2 years? Was one thing we briefly started talking about, but I think there has to be. I've always said it, but it's got to be done in a way that doesn't create a problem. When you come up, it's hard to stay up. So whatever's done this time round will definitely be in 26 and 27 because those teams need that opportunity. And in 27, because it's a new deal, everybody will be getting the same. So it's just this first year that's a little bit different. So for me, my personal opinion, it does. The opinion of the room is that we need to find a way of having it.
I mean, the thing is there again from the outside looking into that room is the fact that, like you were saying about Salford Huddersfield, I think you said put 2 horses in the race. I think there's got to be that. It's got to be backed up, as with this proposal this year, that if you win the championship next season, you would still have to show due diligence that you could be that promoted club, and it works in tandem. That's probably that.
I think it's further if 2 teams have come up, it's all right to miss that next year, the 26th year. And that is if the broadcast deal gets renegotiated now, that then presents further, we know then what that situation will be. If it doesn't and other people come into the race, we will then. So the fact that 2 are coming up now is almost like 1 this year and 1 next anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's some people who've joined this late. I'd suggest you watch the whole thing rather than coming at this stage with any questions, because we've probably covered a lot of them. The model of Super League. Well, actually, let's talk Super League quickly. Should we look at the title Super League? I mean, we probably missed a trick when we first coined the phrase back in the day in terms of copywriting it, because everybody's got a Super League now. But is that something to just to separate us? Because when you see Super League on a TV listing, well, what is it? Which Super League are we talking about? Do we need something that automatically people say that's rugby league?
I agree. I 100% think so. I thought the game would have got rebranded. I'm probably not speaking out of turn by saying that wasn't something favourable to the title sponsor, which I can understand why. The Betfred Super League. So but you can't be disrespectful of that, especially during an agreement. You would need your title sponsor to agree to a rebrand, and if I was a title sponsor, I wouldn't have agreed to a rebrand either during my term. So I think that one kind of prevented that, but I certainly think you're pushing an open door with that. I think there's a lot of us think that we need to. I think as part of that whole thing would be, rebranding the whole look of it, the whole freshness, and this is the time to do it when you're making change, because as I said, the strategic review is ongoing on a lot of different things, and it spent a lot of time around this in detail. that was the decision that needed making quickly. But bear in mind as well, on this 14 team, I said it was voted unanimously upon in Wigan last year, in the last year. And Ken Davey spoke strongly about it. I don't know if he's been out publicly yet or not, or he no doubt will be happy to do so, and he won't mind me saying this. But he said back then about it, everybody agreed with it, and he said, well, we should be doing something about it now, right? And it was stated, I wasn't in that meeting, by the way, Neil Dukes was on my behalf. It was stated that we should deal with it in the summer. And Ken Davey said, are we confident that if we wait till the summer to decide upon it and do what we're doing, that we've got time to do it for 26? And everybody said, yeah. And he made that point in the meeting on Monday as well, to be exactly that. So we've known about it a long time. That was the first thing that needed doing quick, so everything else can follow. But there's a lot of other things ongoing: branding, name, rules, all these other things, salary cap, regulations, that this disciplinary situation, point scoring, how that's ended up a Frankenstein monster version of what it was intended to be. Don't forget, the game's main regulator, Robert Hicks, was suspended or whatever for a relationship with somebody, and the game was kind of left with nobody doing that job for I don't know how long. So he was outstanding at his job. He was the most in touch with clubs than anybody at the RFL. He'd tell you as it was, he'd listen, and all of that. Brian Carney was the person who came up with the points idea, made a call to me, got some feedback, no doubt he did to others whose opinions he takes, and then went through it with Robert, and that was going to a point, and then he went and it became something different to how it should have been. So that all needs looking at. There's details and details of work, which is why the position and the timing for Nigel has been significantly extended. Will Nigel want to do that job after that point, once everything's where it's meant to be? I don't think he will. It'll be somebody else who then comes in and administers that and drives it forward.
Yeah, I mean, the feeling I'm getting is that people who within the game want really for it to not be overgoverned. There's a lot of and especially in terms of the games themselves. The video refs and the time it takes and all of that. Again, for the optics of the sport, it's fair to suggest that in this country it does detract, doesn't it? We need to look at video referee. We need to look at how long time it's taken to make key decisions in games, and somehow find a way to make this a better spectacle on the TV and in the ground. Would that be fair?
Somebody messaged me and said, I've just watched Mark Sneed for 7 minutes tying his boots and wiping his brow. Absolutely ridiculous, and Rob was in my box, as was Nigel, on Friday, and both acknowledged that was just something that needs sorting out. Now, we once had a shot clock, didn't we, for 60 seconds for taking a conversion. We have a shot clock for scrums, we have a shot clock for dropouts. Why are we allowing people to kill 80 seconds of the game before we stop the clock, and then allowing them to take as long as they want once the clock stops? It's just adding no value to it. It's dropping the atmosphere, dropping the intensity. If we need more breaks in play, well, we need more breaks in play. One of the things that was being looked at is, should the game be 4 quarters instead of 2 halves? These are things that can be put in the survey document that goes out. We've got time for a lot of all of those little details, but 100%, the video reffing. I actually felt when I watched the game back from Friday that Marcus Griffiths did a good job with that. He didn't over labour too long. The one that probably needed the most looking at, the Amila Ranley one, he gave the most looking at. I personally don't think refs should go up with try, no try. You either know it's a try or you don't. And if the answer is you don't know whether it was or it wasn't, then ask them to tell you what it was. And if they haven't got clear evidence it was, then it wasn't. It's not hard. Why are we making refs guess and then putting the mates under pressure to justify their decision or feel bad for going against it?
And that's the word.
Challenge. You know, there's an issue in the game. In our game, the ball's thrown a mile forward, right? And Warrington can test the fact that it's a knock on, and the challenge is successful because it isn't a knock on. But in any other element of the game, if another infringement's occurred, the challenge is still unsuccessful because there's incorrect play. But we can't rule on a forward pass in rugby league, right?
Correct.
It's not part of what a video ref can look at. You can't go back and say, hang on, just check that try for me and see if that pass was forward. We don't have it in the game. So therefore, even though it was blatantly obvious to the video ref that the ball's been chucked forward, not knocked on, and therefore it shouldn't be a successful challenge. It is a successful challenge because we're not allowed to say that's a forward pass. You know, I'm not saying we start going to the screen for tries to check if passes are forward in the build-up and marginal, but we either want a rule or we don't want a rule. So, in my opinion, you can't say, well, we can go to the screen for these rules, but not infringements on these other rules. I think people want to watch the game played fast with less interruptions and get the right outcome that's decided by the players and not by incorrect decisions. Referees, by the way, have got an horrendous job. You know, if you look at the sports that are the simplest and the fastest, they're the ones with the least amount of rules and implications. We get 6 goals with the ball in rugby league, 6 goals each. You know, I'm one for have those 6 goals. We kick on the last or whatever. So if you've tried something and you knock on and the other team jump on the ball, great, it's their ball. But if they don't and you regain it, you've lost a tackle at that point. You don't have to lose the ball because, you know, if you want to start moving it around a little bit more, that's just my personal thoughts. You know, whether other people agree with it. I think the offside issue is a big situation in the sport because a ref gives it sometimes and other times he doesn't. You know, and it's kind of their interpretation, trying to get the tens. You know, all our players have got GPS in the backs. Why can't we have a GPS in the ball? What's hard about having a track along the side of the pitch that has a beam, a light beam, not a laser that can damage it on a light beam? It automatically sets itself 10 meters from where the chip is in the ball. The ref knows to stand on the beam. If you're in front of the beam, you're not in play. If you make a tackle, they know you're not in play and therefore it's a penalty. But if you've got back behind the beam at some point in time before you get involved in play, you're in play. Yeah. So, you know, there's way it brings some technology into the game. Bring in, if any of you have played poker, right, you can go on your free tables, your 50p tables, your pound tables, £2.10, whatever it is, right? Why can't we have things emerging during the game when you're on about these blowouts to keep the game interesting? So imagine if you're doing it for free, because I'm not encouraging people to bet here, but you know, people do, and I'm not allowed anyway. But if you've got one draft that's top tackle, one that's most meters made, most tackles, most meters made, highest try score, first try score, all these different things, but it's owned by RL Commercial, right? Super League Europe or the NFL, and they're all up there kind of at the bottom. And if you've got if let's just say you've gone on a pound model, and there's 1,000 people have put a pound on who they think is going to make the most meters, right? And that £1,000, the company takes its 20% rate like a poker table does, and the 800 quid gets split between everybody who's picked the right player. How good would that be? How much money would we make as a sport out of that? How many people would do it? And you can see the stats going all along, coming up at the time, so you know where you're at with it. So all of a sudden now, Wigan are beating Bradford 40-0, right? And there's 10 minutes to go. I'm still interested in this game big time because I need Jack Ferryman to make another 6 tackles, and I'm going to win however much because there's only 4 people pick Jack Ferryman, and I'm in with a shout. Do you know what I mean? There's other ways of creating interest, and on the elements on the platforms where it's free, and you're not paying £1, £2, £10, £20, £100, whatever you want to go in on, and it's free. That's where you accumulate points in a league table, and there can be some significant prizes for those people, and those free elements can be opened up to younger fans to win experiences. These are all other things that are being talked about.
No, and just to go back, knee-jerk reactions. There's too many of them. What I hear is forward thinking and ways of really. I mean, rugby league has been pioneering in so many areas of sport, and what you're talking about here now is more pioneering areas for it to go down in the future. A lot of talk about the structure of Super League. I just want to pick your brains on this. We had quite a few people coming on this one. In the NRL model has been adopted by us in terms of grand finals, etc. And I think in Britain, do you believe that the fact that the league champions, are not the league champions just goes against the way the British view sport? Do you think that detracts? Because obviously we used to have the old Premiership, didn't we? So, I mean, do you think that the league winners deserve to be the league winners, and then maybe it's a Premiership again? Where do you stand on that?
Well, I do in a proper league where you just play everyone home and away.
Yeah.
But in the current, I don't, because it isn't, is it?
No.
Because you can't, if we've got a very slim, and I say slim, chance of being the league leaders. If we win every game, we probably still don't get it, because I think OKR are very strong. And Wigan, the Wigan OKR game, can put them there so they can still. It's in their two's hands to do.
Yeah.
But if they do mess up, we're chomping, we're snapping at the heels. So there is a chance. But would I think that means we're the best team in the comp? There's an argument you could still say that, but the harsh reality is it's not been fair. It's not an integrable competition because, and the difficulty is you look at people criticize Saints and say, it's not right. Saints have got all this points difference. If they end up level with Leigh, they'll be above because they've played Salford twice and we'll only play 3 times. We'll only play them once, and they've played them twice at home. Castleford's had them twice at home. But the fact of the matter is, when those fixtures were worked out, Salford were a top 4 side. Salford finished 4th. So the previous year when Hull had a struggling year because they got rid of players, they was the same situation. There was a higher team than where they were. So it just doesn't flush that out. I think when you've got home and away, more weight should be put to that. Whoever wins that at the end of the season is the best team. And then if you want to have a playoff series, that's something different in my mind's eye. The real champions are the ones who have to play in everybody, home and away, equally throughout the season, and trying to get as many in one half of the season and the other half. You'll never do that, by the way, because of pitch renovations. But if, for example, we end up having to play Wigan just in the second half of the season, you make it as far apart as possible. Get it as close to home and away. It's like football kind of thing. Yeah. That's when I believe you've got a true champion. And then let's have a playoff because it generates money. Knockout rugby generates interest. And that's a winner of a different thing. And then obviously you've got your Challenge Cup, which is a winner of a different thing. I think we should bring back the Charity Shield type thing. We did it we made the Battle of the Borough round 1, myself and Mike Danson, with that first game, and we've got a trophy back there from that. I think the winner of the Challenge Cup should play the winner of the Super League Grand Final as an event. That's another way to generate a bit more money for these 2 clubs coming up. But other people might think that's pointless.
But to kick the season off, yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly what they're doing in football. But yeah, why not? I mean, again, it's a great way. The 2 best teams of last year. Let's see where they're at.
I'm just laughing there. There's a comment. I hadn't really noticed there's all these things coming up on the side, and I just saw one saying, did he just say Wigan v Bradford? Does he know something? I don't know. That's just a typical thing about what this is all about, right? Because if you're listening, and if you read things properly, you will understand that I am just speaking hypothetically and saying if in the 14 teams it's Leigh, I used Leeds and Leigh as an example before. I'm using examples. I have zero idea and zero control. That's just the madness of people. Just everybody understand that you've got successful people running clubs that cost them money, that they don't want to have to put money into, who are trying. They love the game. That's why they're in there. They love it just as much as all these fans. And they respect you as fans because ultimately the biggest income comes from your gate receipts.
Absolutely.
That's where most money in my club comes from. It's members. So, you've got a massive part in the game and we want to hear your opinions. And I love how people can have a bit of a battle with each other and everything. And that's why I'm happy to always get involved and engage in it. But don't be stupid within doing it. You know, people use examples and narratives, and then they own in on those words and sensationalise. Beaumont knows Bradford's in. He's already referred to them playing Wigan. Madness.
Well, your thoughts on Sky, that's going to be out there this afternoon. I've got no doubt about that. Last thing, and then we're going to let you get off because you've got to clean your house, or else you're going to be in trouble. Magic weekend and nines. I mean, this is a massive thing. I mean, anybody, I don't want to go over old ground. So for the nines conversation, if you haven't listened to Derek's interview with Lee, where he talks passionately about what a nines comp could look and feel like, razzmatazz, concerts, all sorts, just go and look at that. The question I've got for the nines is, how far off do you think that is? I know it's a vision at the moment, but where would you see that coming in? 26, 27? If that is somewhere we're going to go?
Straight away next year. Straight away next year. That's the big piece that, you know, even Andrew Thurkel's document where he presents in there about the nines, because I've said it, people like it within the owners group, and he was suggesting, you know, we involve Simon Moran, who's done a great job around the Ashes thing in terms of the ticketing and that side, and myself in terms of creating it as an event. Me and Jason from Global 13 and Matt Ellis are tasked with trying to come up with what that is, you know, and how it builds and the event it creates. Let's get it right about what people like about Magic. Right? Yeah. It ain't the game of rugby, because that ain't no different than what they watch home and away. Right? It's going to one place where all the other fans are, because it's great how we can all have banter with each other. We can all share a pint with each other. We can wear our kits. You can't do it in most other sports, right? No. That's what we love. And then we go into the game for our games, right? And then most of us come out and go back in the centre with everyone, right? So this massive stadium becomes an Huddersfield situation where it's too big for the number of people in it for pretty much all the games. And the atmosphere isn't as great. You watch us play Catalan there this year. Our fans were brilliant, and then they kind of move off on. So that's what people love. If you're honest with yourselves, right, that's what you love. Getting together, going there, centralised place. So we don't lose that. Absolutely not. We don't lose that. But we make it a meaningful competition that produces a prize, that produces a winner, that produces you seeing your team win something. You know, it's an opportunity to create extra eyes on the game. It's dead simple. What I've done at Lee is make something entertaining, right, that attracts different people. The amount of people who have come to our game because they've watched Tapau, because they're into Tapau, they're a Tapau fan from the 80s, and they've enjoyed what's gone on. And that's the reason for putting Singer, the band, back on at half-time. If you've come and got to watch Tapau for 30 quid, which is cheap, you know, or Dodgy or Top Loader or whoever it was, they don't have to have the big bands now because they've cracked it. It just needs to be decent tribute bands and stuff like that. If you've come for that, you've got to watch the first half of rugby, because the Singer's back on. You're going to hear her do China in her hand at half time. So you're not going. After the half time, you might go if you're not really into the rugby. So our job is to then make sure that 40 minutes is the entertainment, and we've introduced your eyes onto it. So if we've gone to Dublin next year, which I'll tell you now is the first place me, Jason, and Matt are going to try and look at, might not work for whatever reason, and it might end up in the UK. It might end up in Amsterdam.
Do you know what, Derek? On that, I loved your idea though of Cardiff, the Billy Boston.
Yeah, that was.
I loved as a starting point to have a Billy Boston Nines comp in Cardiff. Again, in terms of the marketing and the buzz around, I think everybody would love that as a start, because I think it's timely, you know. And Billy, you know, Billy could be the guest of honour.
Absolutely, and he's here to present the trophy for the overall winner. So that's my mindset. Whether it ends up in I think you can still do that without it being in Cardiff, but it is one that's being looked at. It's a massive stadium, that Millennium Stadium, to try and fill on your first go with it. But what the attraction is, if you've got some music going on along it as well, right, and you've got the pyros, and you know you've got all the CO2 stuff, you've got a real event, and it's fast paced right? And it's quick, short games that you play multiple times, so you've still got a chance. And actually, I think you break it so you've got your main one, and you've got to play like what they do in the kids amateur game. Once you're out, you're not out because you're in a competition what you can still win. So we're going to get two teams winning something. And there's a financial element around it. And you've got all the lasers going off at night when it's dark. I'm going to receive it. It's like, I'm telling you now, I will create something there with other people. It will sell out. And it will eventually be able to go to a Millennium Stadium, but it'll grow eyes on the game for longer periods of time, because they'll then pick which team they want to actually get behind, which players is a bit more stylish and become a bit more of a personality, which kit it is that makes you decide to follow it. My lad watches NFL team based on what the kit. You don't know where they're from now. They've dropped it's not the Miami Dolphins or the Dallas Cowboys, is it? They're just on the Leopards, Dragons. I'm not saying you need to lose Lee. Lee's our identity. That's where we play. But when you go into those events, nobody in Ireland cares about Lee or what's Lee. It's about what that team looks like, what that kit looks like, what they buy into. Then they look at it on Super League Plus. Then they go and look for that game and they watch the actual full version game or any spin-off games. That for me is the magic around that. But you boot the hotels out before anybody knows when it is, so no one can book an hotel unless they're booking it through us. And we theme that hotel as the whole hotel. This one's the Wigan and Lee hotel.
On that though, Derek, there's we have a WhatsApp group, and a lot of people, our members, watched your interview on Lee, and one of the things that came out of our unpack was there was the concern there of maybe fans being priced out of those hotels.
No, it's not. It's not pricing out. They wouldn't pay any more, right? If you go to, I said it the other day to Lee Sports Village. I don't want to give anything away here, but there's a very high possibility that there'll be a concert at LSV next year. Okay. Now, I said, know now, right? So I'm involved in it only in as far as we've got a lot of fans that we can tap into to help the promoter sell the concert out. Right? So there needs to be a little bit of a vested interest in that for the club. So I said I would immediately book all the rooms in the Holiday Inn. Absolutely. I would book that hotel out. I'd do a deal with them for the whole of the hotel and get it at our partner rate. No hotel's going to turn that down because they don't know, what's going on or why you're doing it. Yeah. And they do the rate that they do. So that'll be at a better deal. You then sell those hotel rooms at what would be the going rate, and you've made the discount you've achieved. Everything discounts come by volume. So if you're booking one room for you and the missus, you ain't going to get as good a deal as me booking 150 rooms, right? And we're guaranteeing them 100% occupancy in the hotel. Then we sell the package. You've got, Lammy, me, and a couple of players, and there's a dinner the night before or whatever. You do the draw the night before in the square or whatever, big screen set up, everyone's there. You talk about doing a draft. It's like that's when you work out who's playing, who's in which pool. Everyone starts getting giddy and hyped up about it. It's massive. I tell you what, I just want to pick up on here. I was just watching some of the stuff going down the side since I've noticed that is a thing. Somebody on there saying, how can you trust the process of IMG when they didn't pick up on the finance situation? Right? That's a criticism of the RFL at its time, and a big reason why that then changes got made there, because Salford were in special measures, right, which was chaired by Simon Johnson, who was the chair of the RFL, and basically special measures prevents players signing certain things. Certain things happen. There's a full review into that going on as to, the special measures ain't that special because they don't have enough teeth to make things be done. It's an unfair criticism of IMG because the IMG criteria on finance is a year behind. Yeah. It has to be, right? It can't be live. So Salford's finances this year, as perilous as they've been, wouldn't form part of the score because the last year's would. But obviously that's going to be a problem for them because last year's when they had to come and ask for a 500,000 loan, and last year's when they were in special measures. The year when the IMG grading was done last year, that year wasn't in Salford's IMG scored. Do you understand? So,
Yeah.
so they weren't in special measures. They didn't have any evident financial issues. So it's an unfair criticism of IMG, but it's a criticism of the system of how IMG works, because it isn't current enough to know that actually it can admit a team in that isn't in a healthy place and can't see the season out, and realistically, without the help it got, wouldn't have even seen it make the start of the system. So that's just that one on the Salford position, and each week as it's gone on, it got to a point that we kind of need to get into the end of the season now, and it's miraculous how every month they get past it. I'm glad they got through payday at the end of this month, because we play them in August. And you know, at the beginning, when people were talking, Castleford had 2 home games, Allen's had 2 home games. How does it all work out if they don't get played? They've both had their 2 games, and we haven't had ours yet. So, and it's a sellout corporate. So I'm hoping they, you know, they can get back there. I have a lot of friends there as well. So, you know, whatever people think about my opinion of Salford, I think it's very sad.
Yeah,
what's happened there. But ultimately, you know, you've got to cut your cloth accordingly, and that wasn't done. And you know, if you overcommit and you can't back it up, that's where you end up. You know, and I believe there was a promise of a grant that then didn't materialise, that saw them in that situation. So it's not a good look for the game, and you know, it's not changing, and there's a lot of silence. Their owners attended that meeting and voted in that meeting. That's the second time that I've seen them, and the first time that I've met Sire. So they're becoming more visible, and hopefully the plans that they have got for the funding do come through. And then therefore, if IMG grading does see them overtaken, they're able to show that they have got a solid bid as one of the bidders. But as I say again, I don't know.
Well, look, I've got to address, you know, you talk about challenge. I'm going to address somebody in the chat. Paul Stevens, mate, I don't think Super League Raw is for you, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm not a nodding dog. I just don't want to argue with somebody when what he's actually saying is sense. There's no point in me challenge something if what he's saying is sense. That's just nonsense. That's what people do on other platforms where they don't get the answer they want, so they just keep prodding and prodding. I don't have to prod Derek. What he's saying is sense. You've also gone in saying the Nines will be a flop. Have you not listened to what the man's just said? You know, the Beatles used to play in concert halls. Yeah, now we've got bands filling stadiums. I'm sure the Beatles were advised, you know, when they went up, oh, that'll never work. Now you're paying thousands of pounds to go and watch Oasis when the best years are behind them. So, mate, with the greatest respect, not the platform for you, pal. You might want to move on. I'm not going to challenge someone when what he's saying is factually right. And actually, he's ploughed millions of pounds into the game I love, and I know my position in that. Yes, I'm a fan. I've challenged him where I needed to. I've talked about Sky. I've talked about BBC. I've talked about things. I wanted clarity on things. But when the man is speaking sense, I'm not going to argue with him. What's the point? I'm going to make myself look stupid then. Yeah, and there's other insurance companies available, not just Churchill. Good lad. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Yeah, no,
like Alex's comment there, Dave. Bolton are 1-0 up, and the bubbles in my pint.
Exactly, mate. No, we're going to let you go. Derek, on behalf of everybody, Mark Hill, one of our members, I think he says it best. Here he is. Here's Mark. He just wants to thank you for today. He's enjoyed the listen. I've enjoyed the listen. And look, guys, you know, we said at the start of the show where Derek was concerned, you can love or hate Derek, you can find him Marmite, but this is the thing, right? Not only is he plowing millions in, this isn't a loving, it's called respect. This is a man who has completely regenerated Lee as a town, right? Ploughed millions into their local economy, ploughed millions into the game of Super League, which we all love, right? Bottom line. And today, he's given 2 hours, 20 minutes out of respect for you. People who go through turnstiles, not only at his ground, but throughout the league to provide clarity. That deserves respect. So on behalf of everybody who has watched this isn't a Derek Beaumont loving, but you've got to respect the man for what he brings to the game, the fact that he doesn't shirk away. And personally, yeah, do you know what? When you hear Nines talk, you're thinking, don't know. Then you hear this man talk and you think, would I buy a ticket for that? Yeah, I probably would. So I think there's a lot still to come out of this, and I'm sure Derek will continue to give information as and when. You heard me challenge him over press conferences. You know, so there's been challenging here. There's absolutely been challenge. But what we don't do at Super League Raw is bring a man on like Derek to try our best to discredit him when what's the point? Because what he's talking is sense. It's pointless, absolutely pointless. So if that's what you're looking for, we're not the platform for you. We're passionate about rugby league. We've got respect for people who invest in it out of their own time and money. And if you want to become a part of that, become a member of Super League Raw and be around other like-minded people. Steph, on behalf of everybody who's Steph, final word to you, because of course you know Derek well and you've lined this one up for us, mate. So over to you, Mr. Sale.
Just before, Steph, just before you did, there was one comment that come up there, which I think is a really good question that hasn't
Go for it.
Been covered. And it was who else is making the decision along Lord Kane? And that's a very good and valid question, because it isn't just he will chair that panel, but it'll be a voted democratic, and the strategic review panel is five people, which is Ebby Akoku, who's a former rugby league player, Dermot Powell, who's a financial business recovery expert, highly regarded, Joanna Coates, who has been involved in sport at the athletics at a very high level as well, Martin Coyd, who to most people really wouldn't need any introduction. So you've got people. It's got nothing to do with Nigel Wood, nothing to do with Robert Hicks, and nothing to do with any owner of Super League whatsoever. And I can assure you that I'll be sat like everybody else on here and yourselves, waiting with bated breath, like I was when I was one of them, to see who gets it. I'll give you my opinion. Right? I think the strongest run, the bid, the most important parts of the bid for me is financial stability and evidence that you can invest in your team along with the money that you get, okay, to be sustainable and to be able to be competitive. So what your squad is and what your squad can be, they're the big things. And then what you bring to Super League in terms of fans. The team that's got the closest ability to be able to show what they are as a Super League club is the one that was last in it closest, which is Widnes. What they don't have is a benefactor, but the facilities and everything look all right. They got a 7,500 crowd against Warrington in the Challenge Cup, knowing that they would most likely be losing it, and they were competitive in it. Last year they made the playoffs. They're struggling a bit here. I would expect they would make a bid. I think Oldham have got a strong financial person in there and a lot of ambition. Look competitive, have made some signings for next year for Super League players. I don't know if they've been announced or not. I just know the players. I expect they would make a strong bid. York, who I felt were I felt at most risk to when we got in 2020. I really thought it could have gone their way. That affinity, great facility. It's in a city. It's another landscape blueprint. Clint's a smart guy. Got a great team, very competitive. A long way to it in that regard. Negative side to that from my outward optics is when Summer Bash went there, people didn't go for whatever reason. Is it too far out of the city? I don't know. And then there wasn't a lot of people went to Wembley watching them at Wembley, which is a touch on the negative side. I'm just giving you my opinion, but how I look at it. And then London, of course, because they've been in Super League very recently and competitive without much investment going into that at that point in time. Gary Etherington, in terms of as a business person in rugby league, is extremely proven and successful, although not a benefactor. Does he seek investment? Does the geographical thing look right on that? Or have we already exhausted ourselves with the London? And when we talk about fans coming from France, is it any different? But I think them and I think Featherstone will also be likely to probably make a bid. And I always feel that they're a team that's never had a crack at Super League. That kind of, I just feel sorry for never having done it, having been at the top for so long when you couldn't get up or promoted. They was the top team for a long time, and Mark Campbell there is someone who's put a lot of money in the game. So I think that's where your strongest bids will come from. I don't think the current 12 teams in Super League will be the 12 teams when IMG announce them either. So I think that there's going to be a difference in that makeup, and it could be two teams, it could be one, and I could be wrong.
On that, just to put Lee fans, nerves at bay there. Have you put two horses in the race, Derek, where Lee are concerned?
I'm not. We've managed to keep. Well, there has been some changes to IMG, slightly tweaking things, because and that's right, because some things are too easy to get. I mean, I tell you what, I bet Salford's gone up on the digital score, haven't they? Because every month something goes on and it goes up. But no, we are still we're still a grade A club. There were certain things that we couldn't get last year, like the average crowds and things like that, because we were carrying a championship year. So I had to do a lot on the financial side. So that's why we've got a positive balance sheet. I had to move £2.5 million and write 1.6 of it as a sponsor, and then write loans off. We don't have to. I don't need to do that now because we can score in other ways. So our pillars will change a little bit, but overall we make a grade A score. So Lee fans are safe unless they bring an A+ out, and we've got to try and reach that.
Well,
you never know. Keep changing it, don't we? We might do a knee-jerk reaction, IMG, and
your pre-match is grade A. I think that's the blueprint for us to follow. It was fantastic again on Friday. Before I pass to Steph, one last thing, it's come up a couple of times. This nines, for it to work, we're going to need headline players, aren't we? That's a guy.
It has to be. It's part of the competition. It's not up to coaches. It's not like, oh, we're just going to send our reserves. And when the business plan's done around it, right, around the finance that's in there, that's available, right, it'd be a decent prize that every club would want to try and win, and not just to the top club, but it's part of the fixture list.
Yeah.
So there'll be sanctions around, just like there is in any game, around not fielding your strongest team. And why would you want to go and disappoint your fans by not putting your best players out there and trying to win? It's a different version of the game. When we play 3-on-2 in a training session, I mentioned it in my interview, but for those who haven't seen it, when we invite people down to captain's run, team run, like as part of the higher tiered membership step, you've seen it. We warm up. A lot of clubs do it. We warm up 3-on-2, and then when you've passed the first set of two, there's another two waiting, and it's on not much bigger than probably a tennis court size corned out piece of grass. Because that's what you're trying to do in the game. You're trying to get a 3-on-2 and execute it. And as a 2 defending, when you've got a 3 on you, you're trying to frustrate that and make the contact. Obviously, it's not full contact. It's just getting through and touches, but it's fast paced. It's energetic. It's quick. It's scoring. And it's one set of players against another in a competition. So, the nines, if that's the way it goes, it creates more space on the field. It'll become faster. There'll be more tries. There'll be more of what people want to see, and it's all around the entertainment and the fast pace, and that'll create them. And then I think there's some legs in an indoor arena version of the fast parts of our games, and like I said, if you've got Bevan French, Jai Field, and say Liam Marshall against Davy Armstrong, Lockie Lamb, and Bailey Hodgson as an example on a 3-on-3, what would that look like in that type of captain's run format in an indoor arena, but numerous people, lasers, atmosphere, people like the music, the razzmatazz, and that's all we're trying to create. It's a proven thing that's worked at Michael Fitz here. I've got a lot of time for at Warrington. he's massive into the social media side, the marketing side, creating stories, you know, engaging with your loot littlers, the different thing. He was at a fishing thing the other day with Matty Ashton, trying to get around the profile and attract new eyes on it. He messaged me, you know, yesterday, the day after the game, saying, mate, that was just unreal. It was just unreal. The atmosphere, the pyros, the whole display, everything, that has to be the blueprint for what our game is. And he's bang on right. And that's what I'm on about, creating an event where you want to be in the stadium all day and you've got things going on. You've got music, you've got rugby, you've got presentations, you've got fireworks, you've got smoke, you've got lasers, you've got energy in the stadium. People will be buzzing and it will sell out and it'll become a premium. And if I'm wrong, then I'll stand here and hold my hands up and say, got that one wrong.
Well, Game Day Rugby League, they're saying that you haven't got a prayer. So, you know, either they're right, you're right. We'll wait and see. Steph, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just one comment in the chat. I just want to pick out the owners need to come out and say something. It's the silence that's killing us. Well, you've just had 2.5 hours of an owner giving you exactly what he thought. So yeah, maybe, you know, hopefully some of the other owners do what Derek's done. I would just like to say as well, I think credit to the people in the chat that's been 99%, you know, positive, respectful comments. So I think that's a credit to the Super League Raw community and the people that have come in and asked the questions and stuff. And I hope it's been really helpful to people to allay some of those fears, particularly around the legitimacy of how teams are going to be selected and stuff. And massive thank you to Derek to give 2.5 hours of your time on a Sunday to help fans understand why things are being done is an incredible effort for anybody to come and give us that time. So thank you very much, mate. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Oh, you're welcome.
Welcome anytime, Derek. Go and enjoy that pint, enjoy the bubbles, and like I say, we'll have you back again, I'm sure, in the future. But from us, we're back for the Final Whistle tomorrow morning on your trip into work. The Final Whistle podcast will be available. Our members, I'm sure, will be talking about this tonight as well as the 3 games, especially that one at the LSV, which was a belter between Warrington and Leigh. So catch that tomorrow morning for your trip into work on where you get your podcast, the Final Whistle podcast. We'll be back for Super League Raw Weekly live, 8 p.m. on Tuesday, because you can't beat a bit of weekly. On behalf of all 3 of us, enjoy what's left of your Sunday. Bye for now.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.